So, hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is part 1. What if Naruto was treated as the secret weapon of Konoha? And you guys will see some naughty stuff between Naruto and Rin. But before we start, please like and subscribe to my channel. Because it motivates me to do more hard work for you guys. Now let's start the story. The raven-haired Anbu sat at the Sandame's office, sharpening the edge of his katana with a pocket-sized whetstone. At 13 he had already made a name for himself in the ranks of the elite assassination corps, claiming hundreds of lives with a ruthlessness not known since the legendary White Fang of Konoha. Still his skills were not at their fullest. He knew this and grimaced at the thought. There was power out in the world and he desired to tap into it and prove once and for all his inner greatness. Tilting the katana and the fluorescent light, he examined the edge and nodded. Taking of his glove, he ran a finger lightly along the blade, drawing a line of blood across his index finger. Razor sharp. His sensei once told him that a quick death was the only mercy people in his line of work could afford his enemy. A death can be made quickest with a sharp blade. After all his years in the front line he still knew this to be true. The Anbu glanced at the Hokage's door. If anything, shinobi work had taught him patience. The one who could keep his cool in the middle of a battlefield often ended up the last one standing. It took 15 more minutes before the office door opened and a clerk came out with a clipboard. Uchiha Itachi. The Hokage will see you now. The Anbu captain nodded and walked inside. The Sandane was in his desk, rifling a bunch of folders together. Mission orders probably. Itachi had no idea what it was like to be restricted to a desk job, but he considered such an experience worse than death. The Hokage looked up and motioned for him to sit down. Itachi did as he was bidden and took off his mask, laying his katana on the floor directly in front of him. Itachi, I've called you here for some very specific mission orders that I feel only a shinobi of your caliber will be able to accomplish, the Sandane was saying. I know you have a lot of things to do so I will be brief. There was no motion for him to respond, so Itachi kept silent. The Sandane continued. You're familiar with Project 9, I suppose. The Uchiha heir frowned. Project 9 was the call sign for one of the most closely guarded secrets to Konoha. Not 6 years ago the village was attacked by the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the demon lord considered the most powerful of them all. The previous Hokage had lost hundreds of ninja in the defense of the village and was later forced to use a jutsu that would cost him his life. So, in the interest of Konoha's welfare, he sealed the demon into the body of a newborn baby, turning the child into a Jinchuriki. Project 9. It did not need to be said that the project was clearly eyes-only information, classified to the highest degrees. Itachi mumbled a reply. Yes, Hokage-sama, he stated. I am familiar with the barest details of the project. The Sandame nodded. Good, then this will make it easier for you then. Years ago when the council decided that the best measure to ultimately bring about the Kyuubi's demise was to kill the child bearing it in his body, I proposed a solution. The solution was that the child be reared up as a weapon utilizing the infinite chakra capacities of the demon and thus providing Konoha with a military superiority that would later compensate for our current dip in the shinobi ranks. Forgive me for being forward but. Speak your concerns, Uchiha-san. What will this have to do with me? Sarutobi took a deep breath. I have hand-picked you to serve as his sensei and guardian as of 1100 hours tomorrow morning. Surprise marred Itachi's face. Surely the academy will train this child. The academy wants nothing to do with him, Itachi, the Hokage stated simply. The light of understanding dawned on a pair of onyx eyes. Are they seriously considering that the Kyuubi and this child are one and the same? He spat. He is the Yondame's legacy for Kami-sama's sake. The Hokage nodded. True, but then again when has tragedy brought out the best in human nature? Taking a scroll from beneath a small pile, the Hokage handed Itachi his mission orders. The Anbu scanned it quickly and grimaced. The orders were to act as the boy's guardian and train him in a manner fit for Anbu in a period of not less than 4 years. The wheels in his mind spun. Itachi had not been a prodigy for nothing. Already he sees the massive implications of such an order and why the Hokage would choose him and him alone for this mission. 1. He was the top Anbu of the village since the retirement of his old Taicho, Hada Kakashi. 2. The possibility of the council's interference in this mission is reduced to nil on account of the Uchiha political connections with Fire Country's daimyo. And finally, 3. The presence of an Anbu captain would certainly dissuade any irrational people from doing something excessively violent to the boy in his guardianship. He cursed inwardly. I do not need this right now, Itachi thought, pinching the bridge of his nose with his fingers. Those are your orders. Dismissed. Itachi snapped to attention and turned away, pivoting smartly on his heel. Once out of the Hokage's office, he decided to meet the boy he was supposed to train for 4 years. The scroll included directions to an orphanage founded for the child victims of the Kyuubi assault. It took a few minutes to get there, as the orphanage was all the way on the other side of Konoha. As he approached the gate he waved to an unseen person in the trees lining the compound. The Anbu perched on the branch had waved back when he caught himself and cursed. Itachi had to smirk at the sight. He was feeling a lot better about today already. Handing a letter from the Sandaime to one of the people in reception, he waited for the child to get brought to him. One of the orphanage staff noted his Anbu uniform and approached him carefully. "Has Hokage-sama sent you for the boy?" Itachi's eyebrow went up. The man winced but continued anyway. "It's about time really," the man commented. "We knew the Hokage would need some time before he finally decided to have the brat disposed of." The Uchiha was taken aback, though his face didn't show it. Did these people really think he was here to kill the brat? The Anbu decided to ignore him for the moment as a scruffy-looking child was brought to him. Itachi grimaced. Didn't this kid ever bathe? Kami-sama, he smelled like he got himself rolled in the garbage a couple of times. Funny enough, he did look like he was rolled in the garbage a couple of times. The boy was small for his age, he couldn't have been older than Itachi's Itaudo, with unkempt blonde hair and what looked like tear-stained blue eyes. A bright and oversized orange shirt was covering his body, along with torn and disheveled shorts. The boy got pushed towards him and fell to the ground as he lost his balance, but in the process gained Itachi's respect. The boy never once cried out. It was as if the boy's emotions got desensitized from living in this environment, his disheveled appearance owing to his possible mistreatment at the orphanage. Yet even with all of these his eyes shone with a quiet determination and an even more subtle strength that may yet prove to be worth Itachi's while. "You look like hell, kid." Bright blue eyes looked up in wonder. Somebody was actually talking to him. And without all those words that got him trouble when he tried repeating them. The boy looked up at the person addressing him. He was tall and dressed in shinobi garb, but none like the boy ever saw before. The man had onyx eyes and raven black hair, and though he had a boyishly attractive face, seemed devoid of any emotion whatsoever. The man extended his hand and the boy again looked at him in amazement. The man wasn't trying to hit him. Why was such a thing even possible? He wiped his hand on the corner of his already dirty shirt and took it. The blonde was jolted again as the man asked for his name. "Then Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto. H.N. Okay, so maybe he wasn't that much of a talker. Naruto could deal with that. You'll be a hero for what you're about to do," the orphanage staff called out. Itachi ignored him and walked out the door, the blonde in tow. The boy's eyes continued roaming over his companion's body, so much so that Itachi noticed and stopped completely and demanded why he was doing so. "Who are you?" Itachi sighed. And he was so enjoying it when the brat kept his pie hole shut. The both of them stopped as the Anbu knelt down to address the kid. "Listen and listen well," Itachi said. "My name is Uchiha Itachi. The Hokage sent me here to turn you from this," he said, gesturing at Naruto's current disheveled form, "to this," he said, drawing the katana from his scabbard. The blonde stared. "You're going to turn me into a sword." Itachi's eyes dissolved into his 3-tomo Sharingan, his face and body dropping into a position calculated to use 100 different fear stimuli inside the mind of an opponent. "I will teach you more ways to kill than you ever thought possible," he breathed. Naruto dropped to the ground on his butt, his eyes starting to tear up as his body was shaking in fear. No longer will the blue in your eyes show fear. Instead they will show the presence of cold blue metal, the eyes of a living sword. The boy started to tear up, his whimpering causing Itachi to grab him by the collar and press the edge of the blade to his neck. The pressure was enough to draw a tiny trickle of blood. "You will learn that there is no place in your life for weakness and tears. For you will learn that there is one thing and one thing alone keeping me from killing you outright. I will turn you into the sword of Konoha." "Sasuke-kun." The Uchiha turned to see his pink-haired teammate running towards him. He smiled. Sakura had always had a soft spot for him, and even though he told her he would always see her like a sister, it didn't stop the girl from growing on him. "Did you hear?" the Kunoichi asked, stopping a moment to catch her breath. "Kakashi-sensei says that we'll be getting our new teammate for the Chunin exam today." Sasuke frowned. The third member of Team 7, Fujimori Tsuko, had been killed in the mission to Wave Country to protect the bridge builder Tizuna. In the process, Sasuke had been able to activate his Sharingan, but too late as Haku managed to kill Tsuko before the genin even had a chance to fight back. With a titanic effort the remaining 3 members of the cell, Kakashi included, pushed back the Nukanins Abusa and Haku, slaughtering the both of them in a shower of kunai and their sensei's legendary move, the Chidori. It's been 3 months since that happened, and with the advent of the Chunin exams, a teammate had been requisitioned for them so they can participate. Sasuke-kun, Sakura tugged at his arm. "I heard he was only supposed to take the genin exam today. How do they expect us to work with such an inexperienced ninja anyway?" she huffed. "Strange." The raven-haired boy shrugged at his best friend's words. "Tell you what," he chirped, "it's still 8 in the morning, and knowing Kakashi-sensei, he won't be here until well after 11:30. Sakura nodded. The Jounin had asked them to be at the bridge at 10, and calculating for his average time, he would be there a couple of hours late for sure. What say we go take a peek in the academy and see who our teammate is supposed to be? When Sakura nodded excitedly, Sasuke smiled. Okay, he said, let's go. The both of them blurred into non-existence ninja style. At precisely 10 o'clock in the morning, Kakashi walked into the bridge, giggling every few moments from the porn he was reading. Upon reaching the concrete bridge, he blinked. And blinked again. Where the hell was his team? Meanwhile, across the village in the old ninja academy, Yamino Iruka was walking down the hall to administer an individual genin test to one Uzumaki Naruto. The Chunin read the name on the file and frowned. The Kyuubi Gaki was going to test for genin so he could qualify for the Chunin exams in 3 weeks. He read a little further and whistled at the details of the child's training. During the years he should have spent at the academy, he was living in the Uchiha compound, trained privately by the heir to the clan himself. Iruka didn't know if Itachi was that good a teacher, but anybody who was trained by an Anbu captain wasn't one to be snorted at. The Chunin reached room 209 and found a blonde boy in an orange tracksuit, accompanied by a raven-haired Anbu in a weasel mask. Said blonde was being addressed by, presumably, Itachi himself. At every word the blonde showed no visible reaction except a nod at appropriate instances. I think we should begin. The pair trained their eyes at him. Itachi nodded and sat down on one of the chairs in the classroom, third row from the front. The blonde walked over to where Iruka was and introduced himself. The Chunin pretended to look into his file and nodded, if you will Uzumaki-san. The genin exams comprise of 2 items, Iruka explained. First you must be able to create a perfect henge mirroring me. The next being that you must be able to create 2 perfect bunshins. Is that clear Uzumaki-san? Receiving no response, Iruka signaled for him to begin. It had been a couple of seconds before the Chunin realized the blonde wasn't responding. Naruto, the instructor said, getting annoyed. If you're not going to continue with this exercise, I suggest you tell Uchiha-san to take you home. I will not have my time wasted with these shenanigans. Iruka sat down at the desk in front of the classroom, and as he was about to write a large red field on the very center of Naruto's file, the sound of a single person clapping took the Chunin from his reverie. He looked and saw Uchiha Itachi at the door, looking markedly impressed with. Wait a minute. Iruka blinked and stared at the other Itachi in the third row. The Anbu poofed and an exact replica of the blonde examinee sat staring at him with the same emotionless expression he wore. Impressive henge, Iruka-sensei, Itachi remarked. He's been showing a lot of promise with these things, and I had hoped this little presentation would be a good starting point to your test. Okay, so he may have passed item 1, but that still leaves Boo. Exactly what is it that you find so amusing? Itachi's face contorted to a smirk, his Sharingan spinning. I think it would be wise for you to get out of your chair, sensei, the Anbu said. We wouldn't want you hurting the boy. What do you? The instructor was cut off when the chair he was sitting on morphed into the blonde examinee, holding a kunai at his throat and pulling his arm in a half Nelson. Impressed by Naruto's stealth, Iruka was surprised yet again when the desk poofed into another replicant, this time subduing his other arm and pressing the edge of another kunai at his throat. There's the 2 bunshin you wanted, the boy's tutor said. But I think the boy may have overdone it a bit. At Itachi's words, all of the chairs snapped out of their collective henge and transformed into 30 Naruto clones, all with spinning kunai in hand. Tajuo Kage Bunshin, the Anbu explained, his eyes reverting back to Onyx. His impressive chakra capacities inspired me to teach him that move. A rather impressive tactic, don't you agree? A Jounin level move by a genin. No, not even a genin. A genin examinee then. Iruka would have picked his jaw from the floor, but he realized that the blonde replicants were still subduing him, not to mention the 30-odd bunshins who had yet to disappear from existence. A bead of sweat traveled down his face. That's enough, Naruto. Disengage. All the clones exploded in a puff of smoke, leaving just the Naruto holding onto the Chunin's arm. Itachi walked over and took the kunai from his hand, the blonde slowly pulling himself away from the instructor and standing at attention. Iruka straightened himself up. The boy was capable of so much more than many of the children his age. He looked into the eyes of his tutor. Was that pride he saw in the eyes of the great and glorious Uchiha Itachi? He bent down again and whispered into the boy's ear, the blonde never showing an ounce of a reaction. So does he pass? Well, I must admit that this is unorthodox, but he does seem to know his basics. Basics hell. The kid has a higher proficiency at ninjutsu than most Chunin. Iruka shook his head and handed the pair the paperwork necessary for them to enter Naruto in the Chunin exam. I believe you'll find Haddock-san in the training field by the bridge, the instructor said. Be sure and have him turn in this paperwork accomplished, alright? No way. The 2 genin were sticking to the high wall of the academy, supported only by the chakra gathered in their palms and in their feet. The exercise was originally designed to expand their chakra capacities, but Sasuke knew that this was an excellent tool for spying. Sakura glanced at her teammate, surprised to find his face marred in shock. Sasuke was shaking where he perched, his fists clenched in an expression of what seemed like barely restrained anger. The Kunoichi turned to look in the window again. Who was this blonde kid that Sasuke was all riled up like that? Yo. The voice of their Jounin sensei would have successfully knocked them off the wall, had it not been for the awkwardness of Sok's reaction to their new teammate. Hada Kakashi, sticking to the wall by his feet, meandered over to where the pair were adhered to the wall and glanced inside the window. "Ah, I see you've met Uzumaki Naruto," he said, momentarily taking his eyes off the porn he was reading. "Hokage-sama said he'd be our temporary replacement until the end of the Chunin exam, after which a more permanent member of our team can be found." Sakura nodded, glancing into the window again. "That's Sasuke's Nyasan, isn't it?" she said, gesturing at the Anbu, not noticing Sasuke flinching at the words. "Who is he to this Uzumaki character?" "He trained him." Kakashi noticed the furious expression on Sasuke's face. Deciding not to add more fuel to the fire than was already there, he motioned for the both of them to get off the wall. Sakura hurriedly complied, but Sasuke took another few minutes before he got down. Shooting a look that had pure hatred at the blonde genin, he whispered under his breath. Why the hell did it had to be him of all people? Sasuke's mind was spinning. Of all the people the Hokage could have assigned them to be their teammate, it had to be him. His eyes refused to see the path in front of him as he lagged behind Sakura and Kakashi. He tried to steady his emotions with the breathing exercises they were taught from the academy, but even then he failed to curb the growing mass of fury building up inside him. It would be redundant to say that by now Sakura had a good idea that there was something troubling her teammate. Striding closer to her sensei, she asked him what it was. Kakashi took a moment to look up from his book and sighed. If Sasuke wants to tell you, let him. The 8 eyes turned to see Sasuke's form lagging behind them. The Kunoichi shook her head. Ignoring the screams of inner Sakura, beat him into the ground and make him tell us. She decided that if Sasuke wanted to tell them, it was his decision. It took a few more minutes before the trio reached their old training grounds by the bridge. Kakashi had them go through drills, shuriken throwing, some laps and a short sparring match. It was almost high noon when a voice diverted their attention from training. "Konnichiwa, Kakashi-senpai." Flashback. The pair of blue eyes pointed forward, seemingly ignoring everything else but the hallway in front of him. In truth, he was quietly memorizing the path, taking note of every single ambush point in the area. Windows, perfect for a ranged attack from the outside. The classroom doors themselves, an ambush could be planned by placing personnel just in. Naruto. The Jinchuriki snapped his eyes to his right, on the face of his handler, all the while keeping his peripheral vision trained to the hallway. Itachi reflected on how difficult it had been to get Naruto this far. A total of 75 assassination attempts, 60 from his own clan, several pig-headed members of the village council, and his own relentless training regimen. It was a miracle the brat was still standing. But if Uzumaki Naruto were to remain this way, there was one more issue of serious import to discuss. Itachi's eyes were still trained to the front as he spoke. "I realize that it will be an awkward situation when you finally meet my Itaudo," the Anbu said. "I'm sure it's no secret that he feels a certain animosity towards you." The living weapon remained silent. There were no orders to respond after all. "You have to understand," his sensei was saying. "He feels that somehow my duties to train you have taken away his place in my life. You know this is far from true." The Anbu took another breath. "Promise me you'll take care of him all the same." Naruto stopped in his tracks long enough for him to bow formally and declare, "Hi, sensei." Then flashback. The raven-haired Anbu saluted his former commander, which the copy ninja returned if briefly. "You realize I'm not Anbu anymore, Uchiha," Kakashi said dryly. "Old habits die hard, senpai," was the response. Kakashi pocketed his book and called his cell over. When Sakura and Itachi's younger brother finally arrived, Kakashi motioned to young Uzumaki. "This, dear children," he said, gesturing at the blonde, is Itachi's student, Uzumaki Naruto. "As of today he'll be joining our team for the Chunin exams next month until a proper replacement has been found." The Jinchuriki stared at both of them as if to size them up. Sakura took a step back as she faltered from his gaze. Needless to say, Sasuke's reaction was startlingly different. The Uchiha kept his gaze level, unconsciously activating his Sharingan as if to prepare for battle. His teeth were grinding in his mouth. Naruto placed his hands at his sides and bowed formally. His training called for some formality in encounters such as this. "Uzumaki Naruto," he barked. "Pleased to meet you." Sakura managed a polite wave while Sasuke just glared. Soon all three were introduced. Kakashi clapped his hands once. "All right, since the three of you haven't quite had the opportunity to bond properly yet, I think it's a good opportunity to get to know young Uzumaki's abilities," the Jounin said. "Sasuke, why don't you break in the boy?" The aforementioned genin grinned like a madman and cracked his knuckles. The blonde dropped into a ready stance, and just as Kakashi was signaling for the sparring match to begin, Itachi interrupted. "Kakashi-senpai, I think I want to see just how well I trained the boy," the Uchiha prodigy said. "Why don't you ask Haruno-san to join my Itato to keep Naruto on his toes, nah?" Sasuke glared. He took this as a personal insult to his skills. He was more than enough to beat this bastard and he knew it. Sakura, on the other hand, was thinking other things. Why did Itachi-san want Naruto have two opponents? What kind of skill or training did he possess to enable him to take on two sparring partners at a time? Storing this data away, Sakura pulled out a kunai just as Sasuke started to grow impatient. "Begin." At Kakashi's words, the pair exploded into action. Sakura took to the defensive, moving her hands in a set of quick seals to create a pair of bunshin to flank her opponent. Naruto seemed unfazed as he took the bunshin simultaneously, slicing through the clones with a pair of carelessly thrown shuriken. The blur of pink hair flashed just as Naruto took down the girl with a sweep kick to her right ankle. The kunoichi flipped backwards, noticing at once the state of preparation her teammate was in preparing a distance attack. Sakura jumped back in preparation. Sasuke saw an opening just as his teammate hit the ground. Blurring his fingers into a set of seals, he inhaled deeply and fired. Kaiten. Housenkan no Jutsu. 6 blazing masses of heat slashed through the air as the mystical fire flower sought out their blonde target. Surprisingly, Naruto made no move to dodge. Instead, he dropped back into a stance and proceeded to methodically smash apart the balls of flame with his open palms, scorching his skin with each impact. The blonde flowed into the stances like he was dancing, keeping his hands moving like a river of water. Kakashi's single eye widened. A defensive taijutsu based on the Hyuga clan's Gyuukin, Gentle Fist. He glanced at his former subordinate, but Itachi's face was unreadable. Sakura too was surprised. Naruto was able to fight back against a chakra assault with just taijutsu. Her mind worked in overdrive as she pulled out yet another set of kunai. It seemed she and Sasuke would have to work together on this one. Though really, there's nothing to worry about since there was no questioning their teamwork. "Sakura. Get out of the way. This bastard's mine." She slapped her own forehead in frustration. Why oh why did she have to speak too soon? Gritting her teeth at this uncharacteristic development in her teammate, she planted herself in a position to launch salvos of kunai when Sasuke's attack inevitably breaks off. The younger Uchiha gathered chakra to his legs, moving at blinding speed as he activated his Sharingan. With the world moving at slow motion, he would only need a few more minutes to take down his opponent. Or so he believed. Naruto was still in his defensive stance. With startling accuracy, he proceeded to parry each and every one of Sasuke's blows. Red eyes widened in surprise. Sasuke could see every single move as they were about to be made, but still the other genin managed to speed up at the last minute and effectively neutralize his attack. Sakura noticed this too. Naruto's taijutsu was the best she ever saw since Sasuke. The blonde caught the brunette's every blow, but for some reason he never retaliated, never took a punch even when there was a clear opening. It took a few minutes for Sasuke's chakra-depleting taijutsu, and his uncharacteristically reckless attacks took their toll on him, forcing him to back away and revert back to his normal eyes. Sakura waited for the exact moment when her teammate pulled back when she launched a whole volley of edged weapons. A flurry of shuriken whistled through the air as she ran to keep pace with the weapons. The blonde genin hefted a kunai and proceeded to half-heartedly knock each one of them away as the kunoichi edged ever closer. Just as Sakura was winding her arm for a massive haymaker, Naruto ducked under the blow and used the open palm of his hand to slam into the girl's solar plexus, throwing her backwards almost 15 feet and knocking her unconscious. With a loud cry, Sasuke decided to avenge his teammate, spinning a kunai by its hole as he charged the blonde. As quickly as Sasuke approached, Naruto's hand snaked past his punch and tapped into a pressure point in the ninja's shoulder. The young Uchiha was dropped like a bad habit, half of his body paralyzed and his eyes burning with anger. Kakashi blinked as he realized the match was over in 125 seconds. "Well," he commented. "I think you'll do here indeed, Naruto-kun." An. Naruto's taijutsu in this chapter resembles that of Jet Li from the movie, The One. Specifically, the good guy, Gabriel Yulaw. It's flowing but powerful, focusing on the fluidity of the style and the force of each individual blow when they connect. Naruto isn't really a lot more powerful here than he was in the canon. The thing is, he's just gotten a whole lot of specific training regimens with his taijutsu, ninjutsu and jinjutsu than he would have had if he went to the academy. Plus the fact that Itachi was a massive perfectionist, can you expect a genius to be anything else? Made for a very effective curriculum for your average ninja. Will he be able to use the Kyuubi's chakra here? I don't know. Yet. That wasn't gentle fist he used on Sakura, just a really forceful palm strike that was calculated to get the massive amount of air out of a person's lungs. Ever get hit by a basketball in the chest? Hard. Well, that's kind of what it felt like for Sakura. Sasuke-san. The raven-haired genin looked up to see Naruto offering his hand. He flicked it away and got up on his own, limping slightly as he walked over to where Sakura lay prone. The blonde just tilted his head, looking slightly confused as the Uchiha walked away. Kakashi took out his perverted book again. Impressive work, Itachi-kun, the copy ninja said. I haven't seen taijutsu like that since you were an Anbu. The addressee merely shrugged. Well, I try, senpai. Sakura woke up with a splitting headache. What happened? She asked, looking up at Sasuke's face. We lost, the boy seethed. Bastard took us down without even trying. It was then that the Kunoichi remembered. With her free arm she smacked Sasuke in the face. Ow. What was that for? Idiot. If you hadn't lost your head back there we would have stood a chance. Sasuke rubbed his head, muttering obscenities under his breath. Sakura got up and walked over to where the blonde stood to congratulate him. Nice spar, Naruto-kun, she said, patting him on the back. The boy turned his expressionless face on her and replied with a polite stretching of his lips, which on Naruto was pretty much the closest thing to a smile. Itachi had walked over as well, laying a hand on the orange-clad genin. Naruto, he whispered 20 laps around the clearing. After you're done, 50 push-ups on your knuckles. The blonde took off to comply, much to Sakura's surprise. What was that for Itachi-senpai? Sakura raged. He won, didn't he? Would he have to be punished like that? Sasuke's older brother glared, forcing the girl to take several steps back. Now. We'll have none of that here. Kakashi had arrived, Sasuke in tow. Mind if you explain yourself, Itachi-kun? The Anbu turned, facing his former commander. The boy has a very high level of physical conditioning, he explained. He's a weapon first and foremost. A weapon needs to keep his edge no matter what the situation. However, I am disappointed at you, Itado. Sasuke's head snapped up, shocked at the sudden rebuke from his older brother. A ninja is supposed to be able to keep his head while in combat. Had this been a real battle situation, you and Haruno-san would have most likely gotten yourself killed. Try not to be so careless, Sasuke-kun. The younger Uchiha turned from his brother to the rapidly approaching form of the blonde genin, who had just then completed his first lap. His face transitioned from surprise to cold fury, and back again. The boy clenched his fists and stalked off, leaving a gaping Sakura in his wake. Kakashi watched his two students wander off, his one eye watching the blonde genin run his fourth lap. Naruto hadn't broken a sweat yet, which was an amazing feat considering that he beat the number 1 and the number 2 rookies in the academy. He looked at Itachi from the corner of his single eye. Then again, was this really that big of a surprise? What were you thinking back there, Itachi-kun? The elder Uchiha refused to reply, his eyes rooted to watching his charge complete his 6th lap. The boy was halfway through his 7th when Kakashi asked him again, this time with a slight tone of irritation, recognizable only to those who knew the cycloptic Jounin well. Itachi sighed. Sasuke refused to coordinate with his teammate. Kakashi cut him off. You know perfectly well that that's not the issue. Itachi grunted. Perhaps forcing that Haruno girl to fight alongside Sasuke wasn't the smartest idea. But then could he really have expected his brother to be able to fight against Naruto on level ground? Or was it that he didn't trust his brother enough to be able to do so? Kakashi looked at the retreating form of the blonde genin, already halfway through his 12th lap. The Jinchuriki was a lot better trained than he had expected, perhaps even at par with his own skill back in the old days. That's saying a lot considering that the copy ninja became Chunin at age 6, Jounin at 12. Yes. Hada Kakashi could see enormous potential oozing out from young Naruto. Looking at the Hokage monument looming over the horizon, he wondered if his old Jounin sensei would have wanted the boy's fate to end up like this. A heartless weapon in the service of his home village. Part of him felt that the council had forever insulted the Yondame's memory in their decision to raise the Uzumaki boy this way. Damn it. Uchiha Sasuke pounded on the tree until his knuckles began to flow crimson. Ignoring the pain, he continued to mercilessly beat at the trunk until his arms were held back by someone from behind. His head snapped around, Sharingan activated, and Sakura was driven back by the sheer force of her teammate's glare. What in the hell has gotten into you, Sasuke team? Sakura screamed. Keep losing your head like that and you'll wind up in 6 feet under the ground. Sasuke breathed hard, his fist still dripping with blood. How the hell can you understand what I'm going through? He spat. You can't possibly understand what that orange-clad bastard did to me. Sakura's anger ebbed away, noticing for the first time the tear-stained face of Uchiha Sasuke. She never remembered her teammate ever crying, so she knew this was a serious issue. Sakura wrapped her arms around Sasuke's body just as the sobbing began again. Involuntarily, the boy began to collapse against the smaller Kunoichi, buckling his knees as the waves of tears began to fall against his teammate's pink locks. Sakura kissed him on the cheek, whispering soothing words as Sasuke's tears continued to fall. "I'm sorry," she whispered, kissing him again. "You don't need to tell me anything until you're ready." When he had calmed down a bit more, Sakura had reached in her utility pouch and found the roll of bandages she kept for such a situation. Wrapping his fingers, she proceeded to hum a haunting melody that somehow made Sasuke's tears all the more bearable. The Uchiha flexed his fingers, noting the slight discomfort when he bent his knuckles. His eyes were still bloodshot. It was out of the question for them to return now, especially after that little scene in the clearing. "Sakura?" "Yes. Would you tell Kakashi-sensei that I had to go home? I'm not feeling very well." Sakura nodded. She understood. Hugging her teammate goodbye, she sprinted back to the training area where Itachi, Kakashi and their new teammate waited for them. Sasuke watched her leave for a while before he took his secret shortcut to the Uchiha compound. It was still a bit too early to be homs from training, so Sasuke had to climb a drainpipe to get to his third floor room. Once there, he pulled in the shades and climbed in his covers, seeking the refuge that only sleep could provide right now. Subchapter: Naruto and Ramen. Kakashi led his genin cell, plus Uchiha Itachi, down to Konoha village and into the restaurant district. On impulse he decided to treat his team to lunch, but came to his senses long enough to direct the trio to the Ichiraku ramen stand. "The Kakashi-san. Great to see you back." "Yo." The group sat down on the stools, acknowledging the presence of one Ichiraku Tuchi with a polite wave. Sakura declined to be served anything, claiming to be on a diet. Kakashi grinned under his mask. "That leaves him paying for his own order, Naruto's and Itachi's." This could turn out to be a better day than he thought. Once Kakashi told the cook to prepare meals for all of them besides Sakura, he caught Itachi repressing a giggle. He asked what was so funny. "Are you sure you're up to paying for lunch?" "Yes. Why shouldn't I be?" "You'll see." Kakashi shrugged and turned from the pair. He was about to discover the physics of eating noodles without taking off his mask when he started hearing loud slurping from 3 chairs to his right. He looked to see Naruto devouring his 6th bowl of ramen, spraying miso soup on a very startled Sakura. How in the hell was it even possible to eat that quickly? He glanced at the pink-haired Kunoichi, who was suddenly very glad she didn't order anything. Just watching the blonde pack it away was more than enough to discourage anyone from eating anything. Itachi had a smug expression as he sipped his tea, having pushed his bowl over to where Naruto can safely inhale the noodles in peace. Had he not been wearing a mask in the first place, everyone would have seen Kakashi's very impressive imitation of a fish. "Itachi-kun. I'm not paying for lunch, senpai. I can't afford this on my salary. You're the one inheriting a fortune here. Pay. You offered to pay, so pay." Kakashi buried his head in his hands, silently mourning the fate of his wallet. Glancing to where Naruto devoured his 11th bowl, he wept for next month's paycheck as well. Meanwhile Tucci was silently rejoicing. He recognized the boy as the Kyuubi vessel, but if anyone can eat that much ramen in one sitting, he really didn't care about him being a demon or anything. These papers seemed to be in order. "Proceed." The woman with the enormous fan took the registration papers from the guard and walked off with her 2 companions. The trio were ninja from the sand, emissaries of the wind country for the upcoming Chunin exams. Needless to say, the drastic change of climate from the dusty deserts of Suna to the tropical forests of Konoha was unsettling for the 3 shinobi. "How can anyone stand this humidity, Gaara?" she quipped. Receiving no response, she turned to find her red-headed little brother had already wandered off somewhere, leaving her with her idiot brother Kankuro. Tamari cursed under her breath. "Boys. Watch where you're going, brat." The blonde Kunoichi sighed again. She walked over to where Kankuro had knocked over a little boy. Figures he would waste his time picking on little kids, she said to herself. By now Kankuro had lifted the boy up by the collar and the child was being very vocal. "Let go of me, you bastard. Gee. You should learn to respect your betters, brat. Show me who's my betters and I'll respect them all right." "Why you little," the kabuki makeup wearing genin wound back his arm in preparation for a punch when a kunai sliced through the air and nicked his face, forcing him to drop the boy. Tamari followed the trajectory of the projectile and her eyes came to rest upon a dark-haired youth twirling a kunai in his finger. "Lie," she quipped as a pink-haired Kunoichi dropped from a tree. "Looks like you've successfully pissed of the locals, Kankuro." The other sand sibling wiped the blood running down his cheek and glared at his sister before turning his attention at the stalwart who attacked him. "Sasuke Nyasen and Sakura Nichin." The boy yelled. The pair acknowledged him with a nod. It was obvious they knew the boy. "You're foreign shinobi, right?" the raven-haired genin asked. "Didn't your cage ever tell you not to cause diplomatic incidents in foreign soil?" "Cause, from what I remember, this is the kind of thing that started most of the wars in the elemental nations." Unless you're looking to get hurt, you should mind your own business, kid. Kankuro seethed, letting his bundle drop from his back and into his waiting arm. Tamari smiled and reached for her fan. Things were getting interesting after all. Konohamaru, you should leave, Sakura said, and the boy willingly complied. In her mind she worked out possible strategies against a pair of shinobi. She had no combat experience against Suna shinobi, and neither did Sasuke. In her book this counted as a major disadvantage. The Kunoichi grit her teeth. Looks like they'll have to wing it. The Redeed with the gourd on his back turned his head at the massive amount of killing intent being channeled. He was familiar with such a move, having used it a couple of times before. But not at this scale. Concentrating his chakra, a swirl of sand enveloped him and transported him instantly where the battle would have been. He reappeared hanging upside down from a tree. What he saw surprised him. His two siblings were down on their knees, a look of fear plastered on their faces. A pair of Konoha genin was there as well, surprise on their faces at the state of their opponents. Then, he saw him. The blonde with an expressionless look on his face was staring down his teammates, his eyes dead blue rhinestones in pools of white. A set of 3 military policemen had surrounded him with drawn weapons, obviously hesitating to attack. Kankuro, a tear-streaked face turned to face him, mascara running down his face in rivulets of purple. Tamari, he whispered, addressing the blonde Kunoichi who was shaking like the very devil. The two leaf genin holstered their kunai and turned to him. The raven-haired one spoke. Those your teammates? Chen. Tell them not to mess with the people of Konoha again. Sabaku no Gaara watched them walk away, leaving his two siblings on the ground. The blonde with dead eyes continued watching them until, satisfied, he pushed through the gap between the 3 military policemen and made his own exit. The Redeed raised a hairless eyebrow at the scene before he turned to his siblings. Just what in the 7 hells happened here? Fuck. Kankuro was shaking in his seat, unable to even hold the mug of tea in his hands without spilling its scalding contents. Tamari had finally stopped crying and was sleeping off the tears in the suite's common room. Baki had arrived half an hour before and was questioning the afternoon's events. Gaara was at his usual spot, leaning at the wall. I found them like this. Looked like they even pissed their pants. I did not wet my pants. Kankuro protested, but thought better when Gaara's stony glare kept him in his seat. We had everything handled, see. But then this blonde kid Gaara interrupted. The one with dead blue eyes. Why yeah. That's the one, Kankuro managed. He did something, like an advanced bloodline limit. His eyes went all red and suddenly me and Tamari were on the ground and shaking like the shit. The puppet user turned to face his little brother, a pleading look in his eyes. Gaara, I don't want to have to face up against that guy in the Chunin exams. I just don't. I don't care what you think of me, I'll forfeit if his name is called with mine. Calm down you imbecile, Baki said. Our data on Konoha bloodlines never mentioned any Dojutsu capable of refining pure killing intent and firing it over a long distance. What you're saying is impossible. Yes, Gaara replied, stroking his chin. And there's still the issue of the both of you thoroughly embarrassing the sand during this little encounter of yours. Kankuro turned his face down at the unspoken rebuke. Still, we must be wary of this blonde genin. Baki. The jounin turned. Find me all the data this hick town has on this blonde fellow. He seems more interesting than most of the shinobi I've seen so far, Gaara said. Don't give me a reason to kill you when you fail. Baki breathed, blurring out of the room. Now, the sand user said, turning to his brother. I want you to describe to me in detail exactly what he did and what it did to you. Uchiha Taicho, there was an incident in the square. Police Captain Uchiha Fugaku turned in his swivel chair to face his subordinate, waving a hand for him to continue. The policeman detailed the events of the afternoon, all the way to when Team 7 had come to the rescue of the Sandame's grandson. Fugaku steepled his fingers, a look of concentration on his face. The Kyuubi Gaki again. Even after he specifically told Itachi to keep the brat on a short leash, this happens. Sir? The subordinate asked. That will be all, Inabi. Dismissed. The policeman saluted and left the room. It hadn't been a few minutes when a shadowy figure stepped out from the darkened area of the room. Fugaku acknowledged him with a formal salute. Otokage-sama, he said. I wasn't expecting you this early. The man waved him off and took a seat in one of the plush chairs in the office. Fugaku-kun, why so formal? The Shade Motokage said. You know very well we're on a first-name basis in private. Hi, Orochimaru-san. Orochimaru nodded in approval. Still a bit stuffy, but getting there. I was not aware you were making an appearance at the station. Had you informed me I would have tightened security in the area, the Sannin interrupted before the police captain could finish. I go where I please and it pleases me to go here. Hi, of course. Orochimaru walked over the bookshelf and fingered a few decorated scrolls. I assume that everything from your end is arranged. Fugaku sat back down and busied himself with paperwork. Of course. We only await your signal, Orochimaru-san. Good. Our allies from the sand have also arrived. Methinks this will be a rather interesting batch of Chunin examinees, nah? Orochimaru cackled. Which reminds me, your son Sasuke is entering this time, isn't he? Hi, Orochimaru-san. His first attempt. Though I doubt if he will match Itachi. An Itachi he is not, Fugaku-kun. But does one really need two traitors in the clan? The police captain's fists clenched, the only visible sign of his anger. Orochimaru continued. I'll tell you what, after this exam is over, bring him to my headquarters. I'll be more than happy to train him personally. Such generosity. I am afraid Orochimaru cut him off again. I am afraid you overestimate my virtues, Fugaku-kun, the snake specialist said. I will use your son for my own purposes, like you used him all his life. Only I will be honest enough to tell him up front. Not to worry, Fugaku-kun. He will be receiving training from a Sannin. That alone should be motivation enough for you to accept. Fugaku remained silent. This was not part of the original bargain, but it was not entirely unworkable. He will play this game for what it was. And then, when the time is right, he will strike down this annoying bastard with the power he would have gained. Check. Itachi contemplated his next move as Kakashi sipped his tea. Though how his senpai did that with a mask on still boggled the Uchiha's mind. The pair was sitting in the park, enjoying a game of shogi. There was very few people present, probably because it was high noon, and most of the residents of Konoha are in their houses sheltered from the tropical heat. Aside from being one of the most feared members of Anbu, Itachi was known as an accomplished shogi player, understandable since command of your own cell required a certain amount of strategy. The copy ninja broke the silence first. What's your next move, Itachi-kun? If I were to tell you that, it'd ruin the game. That's not what I meant, damn it. Itachi closed his eyes, the bothering pain in his head acting up again. You realize this is eyes-only information. I think I still have clearance enough for that, his former commander said. Itachi took a sip of his tea and nodded. Project 9 was created to serve as a living weapon to be used to augment the military might of Konoha, Itachi explained. The Sandame's directives clearly stated that Uzumaki Naruto be trained in the manner of Anbu, thus increasing his coercive potential, much more than if he were trained in the academy. A living weapon. Affirmative. I wonder sometimes. About what, senpai? Kakashi trained his eyes on the board as Itachi lay the next tile. If this was indeed the best course of action for his life, I mean, the copy nin said offhandedly, placing another tile on the board. Itachi's onyx eyes bore down his brown ones as the tension between them grew. I was under orders. Is that all your life is going to be worth, Itachi-kun? I don't know what you mean, senpai. All I've heard from you every time we discuss Naruto are your damn orders and directives. Is that all your life is worth, following orders whose effects and repercussions are beyond your sight? Kakashi's eyes narrowed as Itachi lay the next tile. He was 6 moves from defeat. I'm asking you, Itachi. For once in your life, look beyond the orders and see what's underneath the underneath. Look for yourself what all of this has done to the boy. Kakashi was taken aback as his protege started chuckling. He asked what was so funny, and Itachi replied with, I'm surprised you didn't see it sooner. You of all people know that there are people in this village who would be more than happy to see him dead. I know what I'm doing, senpai. What you're doing is throwing him neck deep in a battle of politics. The battle he will have to fight anyway. He isn't ready for this. Not at his age. You think I don't know that? Itachi roared. You think I don't know that the kid is in over his head? Kakashi remained impassive, allowing the younger shinobi to continue. I am very well aware of the fact that Naruto will be facing forces far more powerful than a child his age fucking should be. I'm very much aware that the people in this village don't even want to see him alive, let alone trust him enough to do the job he was born to do. Itachi was shaking with rage, so much so that he reached across the table and grabbed the Jounin by the collar. I'm also very well aware that he may be facing off against my clan, he breathed. Even I have trouble in that department. Nobody deserves that fate, Haddock. What I'm doing is giving him a fighting chance. Kakashi was dropped to his seat just as the other ninja slammed the last tile on the board. Check and mate, Itachi barked. If you kept your attention on the game instead of your pointless Ico babble, you might have lasted longer than 30 moves. With that, the Anbu left to move. Only to bump into one pink-haired Kunoichi. Sakura plopped down to the grass, and the Anbu excused himself before storming off. Kakashi stared at his student intently as she rubbed her aching gluteus maximus. Well? Kakashi-sensei. Naruto's been attacked. At that statement the Anbu's head snapped back, one word escaping from his lips. What? Flashback, 25 minutes ago. The blur of blonde hair dodged a volley of kunai, deftly evading each projectile with serpentine grace. Sasuke with his Sharingan powered could barely keep up, let alone predict them. Naruto was moving faster and smoother than what he showed on their sparring match, and for the life of him the raven-haired genin couldn't figure out how. Though the trio of raging Uchiha policemen should have tipped him off. "Hold still, Kyuubi team. We'll charge you with resisting arrest for this," one cried, drawing a couple of seals and firing a quick Ryuka jutsu, singeing the air just above the genin's head as another Uchiha closed in for a hit, doubling the boy over. Sakura cried out as the third policeman drew ninja wire from his pack and launched them with windmill shuriken. Sharingan Sufusha San Itachi. Sharingan windmill triple blade. The windmill shuriken circled around, closing the loops of wire around the blonde genin. A puff of smoke revealed a sliced log in his place, Naruto reappearing behind the offending Uchiha and landing a heavy boot in his back. The policeman grunted with the impact and rode the blow, lessening the damage as he rolled forwards. The other two stood at the ready with drawn kunai as Naruto dropped into a stance of his own. Sasuke deactivated his Dojutsu and called out to his teammate. "Sakura. Get Kakashi-sensei." What? Hurry. Naruto can't handle much more of this any longer. Sakura nodded her assent and sped off as Sasuke took his place behind his teammate with a drawn kunai. "What?" One of the policemen taunted the younger brother, joining the older in his treachery. The blonde edged closer to the genin, using the width of his body to block any possible assault from the front as Sasuke faced his six, powering up his Sharingan. "I know where my loyalties lie," the raven-haired genin said. A loud thud erupted in the air as the flat end of Sasuke's kunai drove itself into blonde spikes. Naruto could only look on helplessly as the three policemen tied him up with ninja wire. The highest-ranking one laughed. "I never knew you had it in you, Sasuke-kun. Chen. Now take him away." Sasuke looked as they dragged Naruto's form away. He stared at the kunai in his hand and dropped it in the ground as if he could not stand to touch it. The genin knew that no ninja was supposed to turn his back on his teammate, let alone betray them. But ever since he landed that lucky blow on Naruto's head, something was bubbling up from the very depths of his being. Elation. Strangely enough, where he should have felt dirty at his treachery, he felt ecstatic. A sinister smile formed on his lips as Sasuke savored his victory. The silent observer in the shadows of the overhead canopy didn't suppress his smile as well, noting how quickly the boy reacted to his inborn hatred of the Jinchuriki. Uzumaki Naruto. He didn't expect to meet him this soon. No matter. This would only serve to complicate things, but not by much. The figure detached himself from the shadows as he trailed Sasuke's walk through the streets. He waited until the boy rounded a predetermined corner before he covered ground quickly and efficiently, blending into the shadows as a minor stealth jutsu masked him in the background. It was too late by the time Sasuke saw him. The figure opened his mouth wide, exposing razor-sharp canines. Sasuke's scream was heard for 3 blocks. The three ninja arrived to find the clearing littered with kunai and singe marks from fire jutsu. Catching her breath, Sakura looked around and exclaimed, "There's nobody here." Itachi cursed under his breath. "Where the hell are you?" "Itachi-kun. I found Sasuke." The Anbu turned to find the Kakashi carrying his little brother's limp form. He gave him the once-over and found a strange mark on Sasuke's neck. "What's that on Sasuke-kun's neck?" Sakura asked. Itachi's fingers touched the mark briefly, examining its design. It was nothing he ever saw before. "We should have a medic look at him before we head out," he said finally. Kakashi shook his head saying, "Come on, Naruto needs our help." Hoisting the genin around his shoulders in a fireman's carry, the jounin took out a scroll and bit his thumb. Forming his hands in a couple of seals, Kakashi slammed his palm in the text, and a plume of smoke erupted from as he completed the summoning jutsu. A small dog appeared as the mist cleared. "Hey boss," it barked. "Long time no see." "No time to explain, Pakin. I need you to track a student of mine." "Sure thing, boss. Got anything that belonged to him?" Itachi picked up a couple of blonde strands that got caught on a branch and held them up. "Yup, those'll do," Pakin said as he trotted over to smell the strands. Sakura swiveled her head to look at several bushes to her left. "Naruto-kun." The Jinchuriki was dreaming. It wasn't anything new. He had nightmares before. The only problem being that nearly all of his nightmares weren't twisted versions of his psyche, but memories of his own past. In his mind's eye, Uzumaki Naruto found himself reliving some of the brutal missions he had to undertake as Anbu trainee. There was no rest for the wicked. "So Uchiha-san," Mizuki seethed. "Does the Sandaime really think it necessary to send someone of your caliber to dispatch someone like me?" "Actually no," came the response. "I'm only here as mission handler," Itachi explained. "This execution will actually be handled by someone else." The traitor laughed, clutching the scroll of forbidden jutsu in the bloody ruin of his left hand. The 10-year-old blonde walked out from behind Itachi, a cold glare coming from his eyes. "You can't be serious. You mean to say you'll have this child face off against a Chunin?" Naruto's answer came in the form of his drawing an 8-inch curved blade from a scabbard in his belt. Mizuki spat and grinned. Very well. If Hokage-sama wishes to sacrifice a child, so be. The traitor never finished his sentence. The third part of a wakizashi blade protruded from the upper regions of his upper vertebrae, the hilt and the hand that held it embedded in his throat. The Chunin stared in disbelief. His body was racked with spasms as Itachi's protege ripped out his weapon forcibly, spraying a mist of blood and cerebrospinal fluid in the air. He saw his reflection in the quickly darkening pool of blood. His face was covered in the fluid, but his eyes were the slitted reds of a demon lord. Naruto woke up in cold sweat. He had lived through 4 years of these nightmares, and Kami-sama knows he was more than used to them. He looked around and saw that he was in a holding cell of some kind, the size of which suggested that it was built for solitary confinement. He was also dressed rather scantily, as his parka and jacket were taken away, leaving only his black tank top and his boxer shorts. From the look of the steel-reinforced wooden door, he concluded that he was not brought to the maximum security facility, but instead to the small jailhouse in Konoha's military police HQ. Small thanks, but you take what you're given. Taking a quick inventory of himself, the genin was pleased to find no major injuries. He was reduced to 95% combat effectivity, but nothing a couple of days of bed rest wouldn't cure. Was this a sanctioned capture operation? Or did the policemen act on their own without the Hokage's permission? Should the latter be true, he was given authorization to use deadly force to protect himself and any non-coms he might encounter. But if the previous was true, there would be no rescue for him. Deciding that the matter needed more thought, Naruto put it out of his mind. Naruto's training taught him only to think in terms of orders and directives. If his sensei ordered him to do something, he did it immediately without question. The same if it was the Hokage who did so. Most of his life was lived under the strict guidance of Anbu directives. Technically, he was still genin, but since his training was mostly Anbu procedure, the same guidelines applied. But all this was changing. When he fought against Sakura-san and Sasuke-san, he glimpsed an odd relationship between the two he was unfamiliar with. It wasn't simply teamwork, which he had a lot of experience with. It was similar, yet not identical to how Itachi-sensei looked at his brother. Once upon a time an Anbu explained that it was called friendship. Friendship. It was true Naruto had comrades and teammates from the Anbu Corps, but he also realized he never ever had a connection with any of them the way Sasuke-san and Sakura-san did. This was something to consider if he was to work with his cell more effectively. Perhaps he'd ask Itachi-sensei about it. Itachi-san. Kakashi was his sensei now, he realized. Moving quickly, Naruto settled into a few katas of the haki, 8 trigrams. It was similar to Gyuukin, he was told, thought Itachi-san's scrolls taught him that it was originally a separate and distinct taijutsu in Kurigakure no Seido, before the Hyuga founders customized it to take advantage of their taijutsu's potential. The genin flowed into the stances, letting his mind wander as his muscle memory moved in sync with textbook maneuvers. Would his cell come for him? Sasuke-san showed him a lot of animosity, just as Itachi-san predicted he would. He was still not sure of Sakura-san and Kakashi-sensei. Naruto's body flowed into the dance of the maneuvers, his body moving on its own accord as he continued to let his thoughts drift. Should he be let out, he decided to give this friendship thing a try. There was nothing to lose, and from what he heard, ninja who were on the same team and at the same time friends oftentimes function more in concert in battle, thereby increasing their combative potential. Stopping mid-stance, the blonde dropped to the floor and did one-handed push-ups. He was on his 50th when a loud ruckus erupted from outside his cell. He picked himself from the floor and listened intently to the sounds of the battle. Deciding that this was evidence enough that this was not a sanctioned capture operation, Naruto's fingers danced across several seals. Page Bunshin no Jutsu. The reception area of the police station was littered with badly injured law enforcement officers. Sakura gulped, amazed at the amount of damage a Jounin and an Anbu can create together. Kakashi's face was again buried in his icha, while Itachi was searching the reception desk for the jail keys. The Uchiha knew he'd be catching hell with his father later, but he could always say he was under orders from the Hokage. Muhin nin, traitor. The raven-haired ninja turned to see a policeman sprawled on the floor, both his legs broken. Itachi recognized him as a distant uncle, Uchiha Inabi. The policeman's Sharingan was on, 3 Tomo glaring with anger at his nephew. "Hello, uncle," Itachi said dryly. "Nice day to start a brawl, isn't it? How can you sleep at night knowing you've betrayed your clan? I close my eyes and lose consciousness. Does that answer your question? Team?" "As pleasant as this chat is, uncle," Itachi stated, "I have a student to break out of jail. Say hello to auntie for me. Tell her I miss her cooking." The Anbu walked over to the door, and as he was about to insert the key, he felt the distinct chakra flare of a fire jutsu about to go off point blank. Itachi closed his eyes and braced himself for the impact. Heitan. Kakakyu no Jutsu. Fire style, Grand Fireball. Itachi-sensei. Itachi, watch out. The resulting explosion rocked the station. It took an entire 30 seconds for the smoke to clear enough for any of them to see anything. Sakura tentatively opened her eyes, and upon seeing a mass of blondes in front of her she gasped. A wall of shadow clones stood in front of Itachi beside a shattered door, singe marks decorating their bodies. They exploded out of existence and left behind a very haggard Naruto, dressed only in a badly ripped tank top and equally grungy boxer shorts, the sight of which made the Kunoichi turn around with a furious blush on her cheeks. "Oh no," Sakura said tentatively, "can Naruto-kun get some clothes on first?" The quartet ran across the rooftops to make anyone tailing them easier to spot, Itachi in the lead, followed by Kakashi and the two genin right behind. Seeing as they weren't doing anything besides running right now, Sakura thought it'd be a good opportunity to chat up her enigmatic teammate. "Nah, Naruto-kun." The blonde swiveled his head as he ran, turning his attention on his teammate. "Why were the police so hard on you?" It was plenty obvious that the Sand Shinobi were the ones who started the fight. Naruto furrowed his brow. "It's complicated, Sakura-san. And will you please call me Sakura? Sakura-san makes me feel so old." "Hi, Sakura." "Seriously, Naruto. You could do without being so uptight." Mashiwaka Rimison. "I'm really, seriously, very sorry." The Kunoichi shook her head and sighed. "You're hopeless, Naruto." Itachi smirked as Kakashi checked their six, seeing nobody tailing them. "Nah, Naruto." Aforementioned blonde turned his head again. "Just how in the hell were you able to fight off those policemen anyway? They're all full of Uchiha, and I could barely keep up with Sasuke-kun, let alone 3 of them. Let's just say he had some very capable teachers." Sakura turned her attention to Itachi, who was exchanging a look with her Jounin sensei. What the heck were those two up to? The group switched a couple of more routes before they headed for the hospital, a good 5 kilometers away, but their route on the rooftops cut their travel time by half. They made their way to Sasuke's ward along a deserted hallway. A pair of Anbu guards saluted Itachi as they went in. To their surprise, the Hokage himself was waiting for them in the room as Sasuke slept. Kakashi and Itachi stood at attention while Sakura stared. "Sandaime-sama," Kakashi said. "What brings you here?" The old man shifted in his seat, sipping a cup of tea resting on the side table. "I received word that a strange mark was found on Sasuke's neck," the Hokage said. "With Uchiha-san's permission I would like to examine it." Itachi nodded. "Of course, Sandaime-sama. Thank you." The old man's bony fingers drew the covers off Sasuke's sleeping form, enough for him to see the boy's neck. He rested his eyes on the mark and grimaced. "What's wrong with Sasuke-kun, Hokage-sama?" Sakura inquired. "Naruto-san, correct?" "Hi, Hokage-sama. Please remain in the room with Sasuke. Naruto, Uchiha-san and Haddock-san have something to discuss in private." The Hokage excused himself as the trio left the room, leaving a bewildered Kunoichi in their wake. They found a deserted office belonging to one of the day shift medical ninja and went in. They hadn't sat down for a minute when the old man said, "Uzumaki. Report." The blonde saluted and started to relay the succession of events in the fight, from the arrival of the sand ninja to the battle between the Uchiha policemen. "Forgive me for my impertinence, Hokage-sama," Naruto related, "but there was a point in the beginning when I was led to believe that the attack on my person was a sanctioned capture procedure." The Hokage waved his hand dismissively. "Nobody blames you, Naruto. Itachi, what's your analysis on your clan's seeming interest in your young ward?" The Anbu captain wavered for a moment before he regained his composure. "I have reason to believe they consider Uzumaki as a threat," he said finally, "as to why, that I have yet to understand." Kakashi considered his former subordinate's comment but said nothing. Instead he directed a question to the Hokage. "Sir, about Sasuke's mark." "Ah yes. About that. I've seen it before." The cycloptic Jounin blinked. "Forgive my being forward, sir, but where would you have seen such a mark?" The Sandaime looked at him. "You were Anbu captain then, weren't you?" Kakashi's single eye opened wide. "No." Itachi's gaze narrowed. He was familiar with the story too. Orochimaru's curse seal. Nearly a decade ago one of the Sandaime cell was arrested for conducting heinous human experiments involving genetic modifications and forbidden seal development. Orochimaru had long since disappeared, having long hidden away to a yet undisclosed location. The hunt for the former Konoha ninja still continues. Kakashi rested a hand under his chin. "If Orochimaru is involved, this will complicate things." The Hokage nodded. "Yes, but we must consider our priorities first. If the Sand are not placated immediately, we may have a diplomatic incident on our hands." Naruto bore his eyes on the old man. "Sir, they initiated the attack. If anyone is going to fear a diplomatic incident it should be them." The old man acknowledged his point with a nod. "I am aware of that, Naruto. But we cannot discount the possibility that Orochimaru may be using this incident to his advantage if left unchecked." The genin's dead blue eyes just stared. "Permission to be dismissed, Hokage-sama." "Granted." The trio watched the boy leave, and when the blonde was outside the Hokage asked Kakashi, "How do you find young Naruto's skill?" The copy ninja blinked when the Hokage and Itachi directed their gaze upon him. "I'll say this for him," the Jounin said, "he certainly has what it takes to be Chunin." The old man sipped his tea. "I can remember you saying that about Sasuke not too long ago," he commented. Kakashi picked up his porno and started reading. "Sasuke is a prodigy among genin, that much is still true," he said, "but Naruto was exposed to situations most ninja aren't even subjected to on a regular basis. Sometimes I fear that this may be too much for any one mind to handle before he snaps totally." "Are you bringing up this issue again, senpai?" "I don't know what you're talking about, Itachi-kun." The Sandame noted the growing tension between the two and intervened immediately. "It was my call, Kakashi. At the time it was the only thing to stop the village council from killing the boy outright. They still respect my authority after all." If only outwardly, Itachi didn't say. The trio continued sipping their tea in silence. Naruto exited the room in silence and closed the door. He had not made it very far when he stopped and called out, "I know you're hiding here. What do you want?" A figure stepped out from the shadows. He was the red-headed genin from Sunagakure and was carrying a giant gourd on his back. His eyes were lined with what looked like black liner, and he had a red kanji symbol for love on the upper left side of his forehead. The two stared each other down for a few moments, soulless green eyes meeting intense blue. "I don't know who you are," the Redeed said finally, "but for some reason I have the overpowering urge to kill you." Naruto felt the sharp rise of killing intent in the room, but he restrained his instincts momentarily as there was no direct threat aimed at him presently. "I could say the same," he said. "But I don't even know who you are." "Tsubaku no Gaara. Uzumaki Naruto." There was an unspoken acknowledgement between the two. Naruto had taken down Gaara's team without so much as breaking a sweat, let alone moving. Gaara had an air of uncertainty about him, the unknown element was just too big to be discounted immediately. But both knew the other to be a formidable opponent. Adrenaline started pumping in Naruto's veins, and his muscles started to tense involuntarily. He didn't quite understand it yet, but for some reason he had the overwhelming urge to battle this individual in front of him. He had some difficulty restraining himself and was surprised to notice his opponent struggling to do the same. A small grin broke out on Gaara's face. Any other observer would have been frightened at this display, since every time the sand ninja smiled, he looked like he was just given permission to eviscerate someone. As the Redeed turned and left, he said, "Remind me to kill you later." The Leaf Genin blinked at the retreating figure, uncertain of how to respond. Then, deciding he hadn't the time to think on such frivolities, headed down the deserted hallways to Sasuke's room. "Please let us through. We need to take the exams." The Chunin with spiky hair slapped the girl in the Chinese shirt to the ground, to the ire of the genin in the hallway. The genin were ordered to send in their registration papers in room 310 in the Ninja Academy, only to find a pair of young Chunin blocking their way. "You kids really think you got what it takes to be Chunin?" the other one mocked. "Ha. Don't make me laugh. You guys wouldn't last 5 minutes in the test, so you might as well give up." "Stop jerking us around," Sasuke huffed as Team 7 walked in the hallway with him. "We need to get to the 3rd floor to pass in our registration forms. Why the hell are you idiots waiting in the 2nd floor?" "What the hell are you talking about, team?" "Yeah. Explain yourselves." The Uchiha smirked. "Morons like you who can't even see through a silly genjutsu like this shouldn't even waste their time passing in their forms. Isn't that right, Sakura-chan?" The Kunoichi blinked at being acknowledged before she replied with yeah. "This is still the 2nd floor and that's not room 310. Instantly the marker above the door reverted to 210. The spiky-haired Chunin smiled before he blurred out of existence. Sasuke anticipated the attack and struck, only to find both his kick and the Chunin's attack blocked by a boy with a bowl-cut, bushy eyebrows and a ghastly green spandex bodysuit. "Lee." A boy with porcelain skin and pale eyes yelled. "You told us we shouldn't be attracting any attention." Bushy brows turned to him and said, "But Niji, you know how difficult it is to contain my flames of youth. Besides, I was not the only one who displayed his innate youthfulness." It was then that the others noticed Naruto standing behind the Chunin with a kunai edge pressed against the Chunin's neck. His dead blue eyes were creeping most of the crowd out, except for the ninja from the sand. Hyuga Niji narrowed his eyes. He barely saw the blonde move, and he was able to follow Lee's movements, if only because bushy brows slowed his movements down. Naruto ignored the attention on him and told the Chunin to stand down. The hostage grudgingly complied, and the blonde lowered his kunai. Sasuke glared. "I didn't need your help, bastard," he muttered under his breath. The pale-eyed boy approached them and extended his hand to Sasuke. "You're Uchiha Sasuke, aren't you?" he said in a tone that impliedly proclaimed how little he thought of the number 1 rookie of their batch. The Uchiha glanced in his direction, noting the pale eyes. "Who wants to know?" "Arrogant bastard, aren't we? HN." Naruto also noticed the pale eyes. He had heard about this clan when Itachi told him about a rescue mission that caused the death of one of the clan's elite jounin. Their bloodline was said to be related somehow to the Sharingan, but he hadn't any personal contact with it yet. He was about to contemplate it further when the boy in spandex suddenly approached him. Naruto blinked as the boy let out a furious yell. "Ooh." Bushy brows cried, such a display of youthfulness and speed. "My name is Rock Lee, and I challenge you to face me in single combat." Naruto just stared. Unfortunately, it only made things worse. "Ooh oh. Your response is so hip. Guy-sensei told me he once had a rival who had the same behavior as you. Perhaps you would care to be mine." The blonde didn't know how to respond to that. Then again, would anybody know how? "Pardon?" "Ooh. Damn it, Lee. One more crack about youthfulness and I'll send you through the floor." Lee turned to address the speaker and found it to be Haruno Sakura. His eyes glazed over and the kunoichi found herself stepping back involuntarily. "Sakura-chan. How glorious that you would grace mine unworthy eyes with your presence. Perhaps we shall date." "No way. Your eyebrows are too scary." "Your cruel words wound my heart, Sakura-chan." Sasuke couldn't take much more of this. "Hey Captain Spandex," he said, "leave her alone already." The bowl-cut genin turned to Sasuke, his eyes with a glimmer of recognition. "You're Uchiha Sasuke, aren't you?" "Yeah. What's it to you?" Lee's demeanor turned serious. "They say you're a genius and a prodigy with a powerful bloodline." Sasuke's onyx eyes narrowed, waiting for where this conversation would end. "I will show you that genius can never take the place of hard work. Fight me, Uchiha Sasuke." The Uchiha raised an eyebrow. "DCH, fine. But don't complain when you're injured." Sharingan. Sasuke's bloodline powered up, displaying 2 Tomo on each glaring red eye. Naruto was about to intervene when the pale-eyed boy stopped him. "This is a battle between 2 shinobi," Neji said. "Do not interfere." Sakura raised her voice, cheering for Sasuke. "Fight, Sasuke-kun. Drive his face through the floor." Naruto observed Lee's stance. Konoha Tekken, Leaf Iron Fist, he realized. The style utilized powerful legwork and a lot of speed and power to inflict gargantuan amounts of damage. Sasuke is at a disadvantage in this battle. Neji's eyebrow raised but waited for him to continue. Sakura, however, was much more vocal. "The hell are you talking about? Sasuke's Sharingan will defeat anything. The Sharingan is powerful, but it has its limits too." Sakura tried to prod Naruto for his cryptic response, but the battle between the 2 genin had already begun. To the kunoichi's surprise, Sasuke was knocked into the with a kick and Lee had blurred into existence right behind him. "Do you see now?" Lee asked as he reappeared behind Sasuke's suspended form. "The Sharingan is a powerful bloodline, but it is useless against a Taijutsu specialist like me. Prepare to feel the full brunt of the flames of youth." Lee's fingers started to undo the wrappings around his arms, and just as he was about to move in for the kill, a toy pinwheel was thrown in his direction, and both ninjas slammed into the ground. "Lee. That move is forbidden." The crowd turned to see a giant turtle addressing Spandex Boy. Without warning, a blur shot forwards and knocked the boy away with a well-placed punch. The blur came to a stop, and lo and behold, another bushy brows appeared. "Idiot." Bushy brows Senior cried. "For your carelessness you will do 50 laps around Konoha when the exams are over." Lee's tears shot out in fountains from his eyes. "I apologize, Guy-sensei. I couldn't repress my youthful passion and time for me to restrain myself." "Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee." To everyone's horror, the pair actually hugged each other while standing in a background of crashing waves and a sunset indoors as they shed far too many tears for only 2 people. Neji slapped his own forehead. "Please. Just kill me." The girl in the Chinese shirt giggled. "Forehead girl." Sakura turned around to see a platinum blonde kunoichi waving at her, accompanied by a boy in a mesh shirt and a chubby-looking ninja wearing what looks like underwear as a forehead protector. "Damn you, Ino pig. Sakura, stop calling me that. Make me, forehead girl. How dare you?" The pony-tailed boy muttered troublesome under his breath and the chubby ninja pulled out a bag of chips from out of nowhere and started munching. Team 7 and Ino's team walked alongside each other to pass in their registrations, both kunoichi arguing all the way. The exam would begin in a few minutes and both teams hung out by the exam room to await the written exam. Ino broke away from her tirade with Sakura and glanced at Naruto, taking note of his features. "Yo, forehead girl," she whispered. "Who's that? How come I can never remember him from the academy?" Sakura glanced at the direction she was pointing in. "Who, Naruto? He's Tsuko's replacement. He trained with Itachi-senpai for 6 years, that's why he never went to the academy." Ino's eyes lit up at the mention of Itachi's name. "So he's Itachi-sama's protege then? Wait, why are you calling him Okami-sama? You still have a crush on him, don't you?" Ino flushed. "Well, at least I admit my schoolyard crushes instead of masquerading as a best friend." Then it was Sakura's turn to blush. SHSH, shut up, pig. The kunoichi stuttered. Damn Sakura, you're starting to sound like that Hyuga girl. Sakura was about to throw a really witty retort when the two were approached by none other than Uzumaki Naruto. Sakura, miss, the blonde said, addressing both girls, the written part of the exam is about to begin. Then he excused himself with a bow as he entered the room. Ino watched his retreating form. Your teammate is a little stuffy, isn't he? Sakura just nodded, having gotten used to Naruto's odd mannerisms. Together the rookies and the other examinees entered the room to take the written exam. Morino Ibiki glanced at the broken glass, his comrade's entrance scattered across the floor and grimaced. That woman's going to be the death of me, he mused. The number of examinees who passed the written exams was greater than the previous year, almost double. Hopefully the numbers will have dwindled by the time the one-on-one matches begin. The examiner took a cursory glance at the answer sheets he held in his hands and out of boredom, decided to read some of them. Most of the questions in almost all of the papers were left unanswered, with a few exceptions. The Haruno girl he was hearing so much about had full marks, which wasn't really a surprise, because her academics had always been good. The Uchiha's paper had handwriting identical to one of the Chunin proctors who sat among the class. Ibiki glanced among the remaining batches of tests until his eyes came upon one name. Uzumaki Naruto, he read. From what the examiner remembered, that was the name of the boy who held the Kyuubi inside of him. He never went to the academy because he was supposed to have been taught privately by Uchiha Itachi himself. Not that it was common knowledge, of course, but then again Ibiki had his connections. The scarred Jounin's eyes widened as he read the answers. And reread them again. And again. The Jinchuriki had answered every single question correctly, but there was something about the way that he worded them that made the answers seem suspect. It took him a few minutes to realize that the boy's answers on some of the more technical questions were actually better and more plausible than what was written on the official correction sheet. Morino Ibiki was very impressed. Ami-sama, he said. He made a mental note to see Naruto's match, if only to see how the boy's Anbu training would come out in combat. Grinning like the cat that caught the mouse, he hefted the answer sheets in one palm and walked out the room, whistling as he went. Naruto kept his eyes open, all the while making sure his chakra detecting senses were alert for any threat that might come their way. It was a basic technique in Anbu involving being able to blend your entire biological rhythm with the surroundings, thus incorporating your consciousness into the equilibrium of the immediate vicinity. Forming a couple of seals, he dispatched a crew of clones to scout the area when his teammates weren't looking. The team needed to find Ahavan Scroll and be able to get to the tower to be able to pass the exams and move on to the next part of the test. Team 7 had yet to encounter any opposition, but Naruto felt it best to be sure just the same. He followed a short distance behind Sakura and Sasuke to make sure they had backup when they needed it. As insurance, he had 3 of his replicants shadow them all the way, watching their backs from hidden locations within a 60-foot radius around them. Sakura? Yes, Sasuke-kun. Have you noticed that we passed the same tree 3 times already? Sakura nodded. They had been traveling in the cloak of a rather wide area Genjutsu and probably right into the hands of another team. Naruto noticed this too and used a couple of silent signals to alert his clones to be wary of who cast the spell. It was a couple of minutes before the blonde detected a slight disturbance in the air. Move. What? Naruto. Sasuke had already picked up on the movement and knocked Sakura aside, just as a flurry of shuriken embedded themselves on the spot where she was. Naruto's fingers were clutching bladed weapons he snatched from midair as he raced across the grass to meet up with a trio from Amagakure wearing breathing masks. But the flick of the wrist the blonde launched his projectiles. To his surprise the shuriken just went through the rain nin, as if they weren't made of solid material. Hasty aren't we? One of them said as a large group of clones appeared all around them. Give up your scroll or else we kill you. Naruto remained silent, drawing a kunai from his pouch. Sasuke glared at the rain nins and stood protectively over Sakura. They're all clones, the Uchiha said. But they didn't dematerialize even when Uzumaki struck them dead on. Sasuke, prepare a fire jutsu, the pink-haired kunoichi barked. Naruto and I will go after them with ranged weapons. The raven-haired ninja hurriedly complied as Sakura and Naruto circled him, throwing kunai, shuriken and other throwing weapons which the clones did not bother to block. When Sasuke was done charging his fire attack, he inhaled and shouted Kaiten. Housenkan no Jutsu. A single fireball each slammed into all 15 of the clones, reducing them into mist. Advanced version of the water clone, Naruto breathed. Impressive analysis, Sakura. The kunoichi raised a thumbs up. Lucky for us Sakura's forehead contains a whole mess load of knowledge on those jutsus. Sasuke joked and the kunoichi slapped him playfully. If only we knew where the originals are. Sasuke gasped as he scanned the area with his dojutsu. Oh crap, he exclaimed. At his words 15 clones appeared again, each one of them mirror copies of the clones they dismembered. "You kids are impressive," one of them said. "Not many people realize that our clones are water-based. However, destroying our clones doesn't mean you've destroyed us." The clone let out a sinister laugh. "Damn. Sasuke-kun, what should we do?" Naruto's mind was spinning as he tried to divine the answers. Water clones that attack the same way as normal people shouldn't be possible, and it was doubtful any of them knew Kage Bunshin. So how did these ninja accomplish this? He was mulling this over when a silent signal came from one of his hidden replicants. The blonde translated and nodded before he gave the order to strike. Sasuke and Sakura were blocking the advance of the Rain Nin when suddenly all 15 of the clones dissipated into mist. Sasuke blinked, powering down his Sharingan. What just happened? Look. The two followed the direction where their teammate was pointing and saw 3 Rain Nins hanging by their necks on ninja wire. They were thrashing silently, unable to scream. At the top of the branches where they hung stood 3 of Naruto's Kage Bunshin. After the ninja stopped moving, the blonde dispelled his clones, climbing up to fetch the scroll. His 2 teammates were speechless. Sakura began. The Uchiha's eyes widened at the ease with which Naruto killed. His fists clenched and opened several times in an attempt to channel the tension in his body. The blonde returned moments later with a second earth scroll. The team's shock wore off quickly when they heard applause coming from somewhere. The clapping came from a group of sound genin, each one of them gazing admiringly at the blonde ninja. "And here we were thinking that leaf ninja were weak," the tallest one said. A brunette girl and a boy with holes in his hands smiled like predators who caught their prey. Sasuke and Sakura drew their weapons as Naruto just watched. "I like you boy," the tall one said again, pointing directly at Naruto. "Tell you what, just give us your scrolls and we'll be on our way." "What?" Sakura raged, "Why should we? Besides you need only 1 scroll of each to pass the exams." Naruto cocked his head. "A team can use scrolls as bargaining chips," he said simply. "The more scrolls you have the more currency you have to trade with the other teams." Sasuke grimaced. "No way." The shorter sound shinobi grinned evilly, aiming an open palm at the Uchiha. "You're Uchiha Sasuke, right?" he mocked. "I really don't see what's so special with you. As a matter of fact, I think I can take you down." "Try me, you pathetic little prick." "Boo. He talks the talk. Can he walk the walk?" Without warning the 3 sound ninja attacked with distant strikes, the one covered in bandages, emitting some sort of sound with the instrument on his forearm as a powerful blast of air shot out of the shorter shinobi's open palm. The kunoichi from sound blurred out of existence and slammed right into Sakura's defending kunai, where the 2 of them locked in battle. The warning resounded in Sasuke's mind as he dodged the sound genin's air blasts. "Sasuke," Kakashi warned, "try not to use too much chakra. The seal on your neck acts like some sort of modification jutsu to change your chakra into something more dangerous. As much as you can try to focus on Taijutsu alone." He huffed. He'd been able to use the Sharingan for a little while before. And he'd been able to let out a short fire jutsu. Sasuke ignored the warning and charged up his Taijutsu while his hands danced across some seals. A sharp biting pain erupted from his neck, distracting him from completing the jutsu. The brown-haired sound genin smirked. That was all he needed. The powerful air blast knocked Sasuke off his feet, dragging him across a good 15 feet of ground. He hadn't finished moving when a second air blast sent him into a state of semi-consciousness. Meanwhile the sound kunoichi had gained the upper hand and now held Sakura in a vise grip. The pink-haired ninja struggled in vain, the brunette having too tight a grip on her. Of the 3, Naruto was having the best luck as he evaded each one of the bandaged sound nin's attacks, all the while his hands firing quick shuriken blasts at his opponent. "I'm impressed kid," his opponent said. "You lasted a lot longer than the Uchiha, and I expected him to be at level with me. Too bad he couldn't last against Zaku though." Naruto dashed up a tree, forming a quick set of seals that got interrupted as a blast of air came from Zaku's open palm. The blonde evaded, each attack narrowly missing him by inches. He was actually a lot faster than this, but for Sakura's sake he remained in the area, withholding his true skills. A shot from the bandaged sound nin got lucky and hit him square in the chest, making breathing difficult. The 2 sound genin got closer and closer, and when they were 3 feet away Naruto smirked. "Wait," Sakura thought. Since when did Naruto smile? Her questions were answered as a blinding explosion blew the pair away, leaving scorched bodies in its wake. The kunoichi looked and saw Naruto standing on the side of a tree trunk, his hands locked in a seal. "Kage Bunshin Bakuha, exploding shadow clone," he breathed. The sound kunoichi began to panic until she realized she still had a hostage. "Listen Blondie," she spat, "I don't care how powerful you are, but if you fear for your friend's life, you will surrender your scrolls to me." Naruto hesitated but reached into his pouch when the girl put a kunai to Sakura's neck. Sakura's mind went into overdrive, and as soon as the girl tried reaching out for the scrolls, she flipped the enemy kunoichi over her head and dashed away. Unfortunately, the sound kunoichi was fast and made a grab for the scrolls, running away in one smooth motion. Naruto started to chase until a voice stopped him in his tracks. "Hold it right there, Uzumaki." Naruto turned to see Sasuke covered in strange black markings. He cursed himself for not watching if the curse seal had been activated. Sasuke shouldn't have been so careless. Sakura looked at her teammate in horror. "Which way did she go, Uzumaki?" Naruto pointed and the Uchiha grinned evilly. When Sasuke blurred out of existence, Sakura found her voice again, asking what was that. "The curse seal." "The what?" "Can't explain now. Follow me." Without another word, Naruto gathered chakra to his legs and leapt up a branch, intent on shadowing Sasuke's progress. Sakura shook her head in disbelief, unsure of how to respond to recent developments. "Will you slow down and tell me what's going on?" The kunoichi struggled to keep up as they sprinted through the trees, her pink locks flying wildly behind her. The two of them were moving at a faster pace than she was ever used to, and they had been running, flat out sprinting for 20 minutes straight. Sakura estimated that they had already covered several kilometers of ground in the Forest of Death, which was probably more than any genin team could claim at the moment. All the while, she noticed several orange blurs in the horizon, which she assumed were the bunch and her teammates sent out to scout up ahead. Naruto had explained a moment before that this was why he wore orange, as it was a lot easier to follow such a loud color on his scouts, even as they moved ever farther away. "What about this curse seal thing? Naruto. Speak to me." Naruto's pace didn't flag down as he flew through the trees. Sakura gritted her teeth as she followed, already her legs were becoming the death of her. Suddenly the blonde genin stopped and stared into the distance, while the kunoichi dropped on her butt on the branch they were standing in. "Great." Inner Sakura raged to herself. "How the hell will Sasuke find me attractive when I have the thighs of a professional wrestler?" "Okay," Sakura huffed, trying in vain to catch her breath, "no more sprinting. My thighs are killing me, damn it." Naruto's blue eyes scanned the horizon, narrowing like he was looking at something extremely hard to see. He took a few minutes to stare straight ahead before he declared, "I lost track of my clones. We're moving too slowly for us to keep up with them properly." The kunoichi glared. "So you're saying it's my fault?" The blonde turned as if to consider. "No, merely that you don't have the stamina for this kind of thing." Sakura pouted from her seat. "That amounts to the same thing, bastard," she muttered. Sakura refused the helping hand Naruto offered, deciding that she didn't have the strength to stand up just yet. What really surprised her was that the blonde didn't even seem to be breaking a sweat, and his breathing was as level as if he just had a brisk walk. "That's it," she decided. "This guy just isn't human." Sakura remembered that offhand comment Kakashi-sensei made on him about Itachi-senpai giving him personal training instead of being sent to the academy. She remembered whispered those rumors about Itachi being on the same level as the Sannin, the legendary three ninja who studied under the Sandaime Hokage himself, one of which personally trained the Yondaime, the one who defeated the Kyuubi. Was this the power of Itachi's training? Shuddering, Sakura feared the moment she would have to see Naruto's true potential. It was almost too nerve-wracking to contemplate. The blonde swiveled his head left and right, as if he was testing the air. Suddenly, another copy of the genin appeared in front of them and saluted. "Report," Naruto barked. Kage Naruto saluted, saying, "Sasuke-san and the sound kunoichi have stopped to do battle in a clearing 675.235 meters from this location, southwest. We had trouble keeping up with them, Naruto Taicho." "Alright." Naruto glanced at his teammate. Sakura was just picking herself up from the ground, dusting herself off. "Sakura, I need to go on ahead. I'll be moving twice as fast as we've been so far, and I don't want you to waste your stamina trying to keep up." "I'm not a helpless little girl, you arrogant bastard." "I never said that." "But you implied it." "I'm sorry, but I have no time to argue with you," the blonde said, preparing to launch himself through the branches. "Kage Naruto, accompany Sakura to the clearing as soon as she's recovered." The shadow clone saluted as his master blurred out of existence. Sakura moved to stop him, but a pair of strong arms restrained her. "Damn you, Bunshin team. Let me go." Sakura raged before her fatigue got to her again and she fell flat on her butt. "Sakura-san," the clone said, "you have to rest. Naruto Taicho is going to be moving faster than any genin will be able to keep up with, and you need to conserve your strength for. Don't you dare patronize me, you stupid massive chakra. I apologize if I meant any disrespect. Just shut up." Sakura had finally caught her breath and was glaring daggers at the direction Naruto took off in. The clone offered his hand and she grudgingly accepted, pulling herself up. "If you really want to get there, I can accompany you," he offered. The kunoichi raised her hands in surrender, saying, "Fine, just as long as you don't carry me." The Bunshin didn't give her a chance to protest as he picked her up in a fireman's lift and launched the two of them in the air. The Kunoichi couldn't even find the voice to scream as she found that they were traveling at a faster pace than she thought she could ever manage. The trees blurred past them until Sakura couldn't even see their details anymore, and when they accelerated even more, she found she couldn't even look ahead without tearing up. How could a Bunshin move this fast? She wondered to herself. We'll be there in T-8 minutes, Sakura-sama, Kage Naruto said. Can you please slow down? My eyes are starting to hurt. Negative, Sakura-sama. If we do, the battle will be over when we get there. Now Sakura was worried. She's seen firsthand what Naruto could do in a sparring match and doubted it very highly that this was his true skill. Should he unleash his full potential in an actual fight? The Kunoichi shuddered at the thought. She saw the look in Sasuke's eyes the moment he regained consciousness and instinctively worried for the fate of the sound Kunoichi. Thought the girl had been relentlessly cruel in their earlier encounter, she didn't want the girl to get seriously hurt. Do you know anything about what Naruto was saying earlier? Sakura asked, surprised at the ease she had in communicating with a shadow clone. About the curse seal. The clone accelerated before he responded. Negative, Sakura-sama. But I'm sure Naruto Taicho will tell you once we get there. Alright. How long until we get there anyway? 60 seconds. Hold on. The two of them stopped at the higher branches of a tree, and as the clone let down Sakura, she looked in horror at the smoking inferno raging before them. XXX. 5 minutes before. Sasuke reveled in the raw power coursing through his veins. His Sharingan seemed amplified, as if for the first time he was seeing the full power of the Uchiha bloodline's potential. Before him lay the sound Kunoichi, shaking like a frightened rabbit caught by a rabid wolf. He had run her down until she was dead tired, wearing down her energy reserves until she couldn't even move anymore. Gin struggled to contain the fear growing in her mind as she looked at her pursuer, the left side of his face covered in the black markings of the heaven seal. Was this the power of Orochimaru-sama's curse seal? Miss Yumi warned her earlier prior to the Chunin tests that the heaven seal was already given to her leader's chosen apprentice, but she had no idea of the raw potential the seal possessed. Uchiha's eyes blazed in red, a total of 4 tomo spinning. His current state of being made him more fearsome, making the eerie red glow of his clan's bloodline seem like the eyes of a demon. A demon. This was just what Sasuke was at the moment. You shouldn't have run, pathetic little Odonin, Sasuke said, laughing darkly. You'll just die tired. Now what shall I do with you? He cocked his head slightly, that insane smile lighting up his face. He picked up the Kunoichi by the collar, a kunai spinning in his right hand as he contemplated where to make the first cut. Rin closed her eyes, finally accepting that it was all over for her. The impact of the Hausenka fireball knocked the sound genin from Sasuke's grasp. Rin opened her eyes to find that she was held by a leaf genin with blonde hair and a horrendously orange tracksuit. Why? She asked. Why would you help me? I'm your enemy, damn it. The blonde's dead blue eyes just stared straight at the Uchiha, meeting the evil red glare of the legendary Sharingan Dojutsu. Naruto completely ignored her previous statement as he surveyed the situation before him. The trio was silent until the Uchiha finally spoke. You know, Sasuke said, finally. I've always wondered how good you really were. Naruto shifted Rin in his grip so that he was holding her by the waist. There's no need to kill the girl at this moment, Sasuke-san. We can easily take the scroll from her now that she's much more cooperative. The sound ninja would have protested, thinking that she didn't want to give up the scroll she worked so hard to get. When she finally realized that there was no point in arguing, she just nodded vigorously in agreement. Sasuke spat in irritation. Where's the fun in that? Naruto-kun. The blonde wasn't paying any attention. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw 6 of his replicants position themselves in the surrounding trees, careful to keep themselves out of sight with a few D-class stealth jutsus. There just wasn't any point in engaging anyone in one-on-one combat when you could just overwhelm the opponent with sheer numbers. Naruto placed a hand behind his back, keeping his fingers angled away from Sasuke's line of sight as he signaled his clones to prepare to strike from a distance. The Uchiha's patience was wearing thin at Naruto's lack of a response. Don't you dare ignore me, bastard. He roared. Now, Naruto signaled, gathering chakra to his feet and preparing to run. Simultaneously, 6 of the shadow clones danced through several seals in preparation to launch ranged fire jutsus, while another group of 4 launched shuriken and kunai where Sasuke was standing. The Uchiha's bloodline warned him in advance of the incoming projectiles, and he leapt upwards to evade the barrage of edged weapons. Is that all you got, Uzumaki? Sasuke taunted. I can dodge these things with my eyes closed. Heian. Ryuken no Jutsu. Fire style. Dragon fire technique. The streams of flame proved harder to evade midair than they would have been on the ground. Snarling internally, Sasuke dodged and leapt and twisted mid-flight as the fire jutsus continued to stream closer to his person. The 6 clones cycled their flame attacks in sync with each other. When 3 had to inhale, 3 took their place. All the while the other 4 kept launching edged weapons, forcing the Uchiha to roll on the ground to evade the volley upon his impact. On terra firma, the Sharingan's predictive capacities proved to be more effective as Sasuke's evading skills could be more easily executed on solid ground. Running across the flaming grass, he launched shuriken at the Bunshin's hiding spots, listening for the telltale poof when a shadow clone took the weapon to the chest. Within 80 seconds he had reduced the number of clones from 10 to 4, and he still wasn't done. By now half the trees in his part of the forest was on fire, but Sasuke ignored the damage when he realized something. Naruto had picked up the hostage and run. XXXXX. Sakura jumped when her teammate suddenly appeared right next to her, the sound genin clutched under his arm. "Okay Naruto," she growled, "you better have an amazing explanation in mind because if you don't, it's Jinjutsu." The pink-haired Kunoichi blinked. "What?" "Meijin. Kauka no Jutsu, demonic illusion. Descending hell technique," Naruto stated. "I've modified it so that ordinary Kage Bunshin can use it in wide-range areas. It projects a vision of flames directly in the mind of the target. Ordinarily, the Sharingan should have been able to see right through it, but Sasuke-san's level of Sharingan just isn't able to see the Jinjutsu when launched from several different sources simultaneously." Page Naruto saluted. "If you don't require my services anymore, I take my leave, Naruto Taicho." With that the clone disappeared out of existence, leaving the trio on the branch. Rin finally collapsed on the ground, her pupils wide at the destruction she was seeing. This was Jinjutsu. The sound Kunoichi had never seen anything like this before. She glanced at the blonde who rescued her, thinking that if Odo ever laid their hands on this one, they wouldn't even need the alliance with the Uchiha. She shook her thoughts away, watching the battle tersely. Sasuke was engaging the remaining clones in a taijutsu battle, and apparently he was winning. It didn't take long before 4 became 3, then became 1. Naruto tensed up. The Sharingan should have drained his chakra completely 40 seconds ago. "Is that all you've got, Uzumaki?" Sasuke challenged. "I still have room for more. Come out wherever you are." "You?" Rin turned her head up, surprised at being addressed. "Accompany Sakura here. Neither of you will be of any help in the coming battle, so stay out of the way." Sakura nodded, unable to find any purpose to oppose Naruto's reasoning. As Naruto prepared to launch himself at the Uchiha, the sound genin latched onto his wrist. His dead blue eyes looked at her frightened face, gesturing for her to let go. She did, however reluctantly. As Naruto blurred out of existence, Rin whispered the words she held back at her savior's empty gaze. "Be careful. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, the Sword of Konoha. This is my story. From birth the village had always hated me. I have memories of being beaten up when I was as young as 3 years old. The orphanage offered me no protection, nor did they give me anything that I might have used to create an attachment between myself and this village. In the beginning I hated them. I hated them for their ignorance, their anger and their cruelty. What had I done to deserve my fate? Was my being born a sin in itself? Many nights I slept in pain, mind and body with only these thoughts keeping me company. I kept asking Hokage-sama, but for some reason he wouldn't tell me. I thought I'd never find out. Until Itachi-sensei. The day Itachi-sensei took me in, he invited the same hatred upon his life. For the first few months the both of us had lived in the Uchiha district until his family kicked him out. Unofficially, he wasn't even Uchiha anymore. I remember the military police coming to our house in regular intervals, usually on some pretext or another that Itachi had committed some crime or another. The visits eventually came so often that Hokage-sama assigned a troop of Anbu to stand guard at all times from different locations around the apartment building. This kept them away for some time. I got to know some of them, thought none had ever bothered to take off their masks, even when we got past a level of casual familiarity with each other. The funny thing was, trained assassins treated me kinder than the village's so-called protectors of the peace ever did. It never bothered me much, training kept me too busy to notice the things around me. As a teacher Itachi-sensei was quick to dispense punishment and quite the opposite when it came to giving praise. He told me I needed to be strong enough to protect the village when the time came for it to call on my help. I asked him in anger why I should bother to take any steps to protect a village that hated me. I asked him why I should bother saving the lives of people who never looked at me without cold fury burning in their eyes. I asked him why I shouldn't just use the training he was giving me to just kill them all in their sleep. I never once anticipated him to respond the way he did. He hit me. It was the only time Itachi-sensei landed a blow on me besides training. I was so surprised I never got a chance to ride the blow and found myself pinned to the opposing wall 8 meters away with a kunai to my neck. He told me one thing and one thing alone after that. It was what shinobi lived for. Itachi-sensei didn't speak to me for a long time after that incident. For what seemed like the longest time, he was a lot crueler during training than he ever was before. He literally broke me down every single time, forcing me into submission with every single act of brutality he subjected me to. I began to believe that for some reason he began to hate me too. It wasn't until an incident during one of our sparring sessions that I finally understood why. Itachi-sensei wasn't holding back, as always, and by the time I was too tired to react, he cast a genjutsu on me that I didn't recognize. To this day I still don't understand how in the hell it worked. When I felt his chakra spike up, I looked away, thinking to keep my eyes away from the Sharingan-based genjutsu he was going to throw my way. Now that I look back on it, the biggest mistake I made was when I made eye contact with his finger. Stupid. Itachi-sensei's personal genjutsu worked as long with at least one finger. No hand seals, and impossible to copy with even the mastered Sharingan. I figure the theory was that he could manipulate his chakra to move the proper way even without moving his hands through the seals. It was a brilliant move. Too bad both of us never saw the repercussions of it. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed alongside his. To my horror, he had third-degree burns covering 2/3 of his body. I was struck dumb by what I had done, or at least by what I thought I'd done. The only other people there were Anbu Vice Captain Yazuki Yugao and the Sandaime himself. He explained that my chakra had spiked up to critical levels when I tried to shake off the genjutsu. I had accidentally incinerated Itachi-sensei and myself to levels close to certain death. If it wasn't for the Anbu squad stationed nearby, both of us wouldn't have made it to the hospital in time for the medical ninja to save their lives. The next thing I knew, I was running faster than I ever did before. I didn't even check to see where I was going, the only thought I had was that I needed to get away. I ran until I found myself going up a steep incline, and 15 minutes later I was at the top of a rock outcropping looking down on Konoha. Yuigao-nichan tailed me all the way there. I was crying so hard I didn't even see her come behind me. Didn't notice when she wrapped her arms around me and told me that Itachi-sensei didn't blame me for what I did. I was tired. Too tired to pay attention to what she was telling me. I don't know how long we were there, but I remember asking where we were. She told me. Hokage Mountain. The giant monument commemorating the lives of all 4 of the Hokages Konohagakure no Sato ever had. I asked her then what would drive men like these, the most powerful ninja of all time, to give their lives for this village. She told me the exact same thing Itachi-sensei did. It was what shinobi lived for. Naruto evaded the first Kaiten strike with relative ease. Relative, since only a few fibers of his jacket was singed in the onslaught. The blonde genin shuddered to think just what Sasuke would have been capable at full strength without most of his chakra drained away. As it was, his options was limited to A. Drain Sasuke's chakra, B. Disable Sasuke enough that he won't be a danger to himself, C. Remove the influence of Sasuke's curse sealer, D. Kill him before he became a danger to the others. Right now he was simultaneously working on options and B, well, figuring out how to pull off option C. He hoped to Kami-sama he would never have to resort to option D. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? Sasuke taunted. Having difficulty evading my fire strikes. How's this then? The Uchiha's hands danced into some seals, inhaled and fired. Naruto was already reacting mid-jutsu. His own hands danced through some seals, hoping that Sasuke's concentration was off for him not to react quickly enough. Fire Blast met Earth Dragon as the two ninjutsu slammed against each other. Pain. Kakakyu no Jutsu. Fire Style. Grand Fireball Technique. Oten. Doryuden. Earth Style. Earth Dragon. Dragon met Fireball as Sasuke's fire jutsu evaporated the moisture in Naruto's jutsu, leaving a hardened shell of a soiled dragon in its wake. The blonde didn't even wait for the mist to clear when he dashed forward on chakra-powered legs, initiating the attack. The Uchiha smirked, evading the first blow with mercurial speed as Naruto spun around for a spinning heel kick. The impact resounded throughout the forest, sending shock waves throughout the trees. Sakura and Rin struggled to hold their footing, surprised at the sudden display of strength they were seeing. What are those two? The sound Kunoichi asked out loud. I expected the Uchiha to be strong, but the other one, her voice trailed off. Impressive match-up. What do you think, Dosu? Sakura whirled around, kunai in hand, to find herself face to face with the other 2 members of the team from Hidden Sound. The bandaged genin saw her apprehension and shrugged. Put your weapon away, woman, he stated. We want to see firsthand the clash of the titans. Zaku nursed some of the burn wounds on his forearms. If anything, I'm betting on the blonde, he said. I don't want him to lose before I can get my 2 licks in. Dosu nodded, while Rin just kept her face impassive. Once Sakura saw that they mean no harm, she focused her attention at the growing intensity of the pair's battle. Do you think you can keep up with me forever? Sasuke roared, speeding towards his opponent with twin kunai spinning in both hands. Naruto braced himself for the impact, blocking the blow with one of his own. Using Sasuke's momentum, the blonde threw himself backwards, flipping his opponent into a tree. The Uchiha crashed into the wooden surface, shattering part of the tree into splinters as Naruto's hands danced into the seals again. There's too many observers now, Sasuke-san, he noted. I'll have to end this right now before any more of our techniques are seen. Dosu snorted, while Kin's attention seemed to be riveted to everything the blonde said. Naruto evaded an elbow strike by leaning to his left and caught Sasuke's roundhouse kick with his right arm. Blue eyes met red as the blonde genin pulled close to his opponent. I'm sorry, Sasuke-san, the blonde apologized. With those words Naruto's eyes flared red, his pupils turning into slits. Flaring red chakra exploded outwards from the blonde as he released a controlled amount of his killing intent directly into Sasuke's mind using his personal genjutsu. Meijin. Satsui no Hadu no Jutsu. Demonic illusion. Wave of killing urge technique. Sasuke spasmed uncontrollably, dropping hard into the ground as his Sharingan failed to push back the strange and oddly powerful genjutsu. Tears formed in Uchiha's eyes as visions of horror filled his mind. Sakura dropped from the trees, rushing towards her fallen comrade. Sasuke-kun. The kunoichi bent down to check on him as the sound ninja walked over to their direction. Surprisingly, Rin was the one who handed over their two earth scrolls and the single heaven scroll. Naruto blinked as the scroll was pressed into his hands. We've seen what you can do, she said. I don't think we'll last very long if you choose to fight against us. The blonde understood, bowing to show his respect. He reached behind his pouch, causing Dosu and Zaku to draw their weapons. When Naruto's hand appeared again, he was holding one of the earth scrolls, which he then tossed over to Kin. We only need the heaven scroll, the blonde said. It's only fair we give you this one. Rin smiled for a moment before she caught herself and went back to the depreciating scowl she had on before. Then we're even, Blondie, she spat. We won't go easy on you next time. Come on, guys. Dosu and Zaku stared at her retreating form, the brunette muttering, must be that time of the month under his breath. The bandaged genin slapped him over the head before he himself took off after his comrade. Zaku shrugged his shoulders and followed momentarily after. Naruto hadn't even had a chance to turn around before Sakura slapped him hard across the face. Damn you, Naruto. She screamed. That was entirely uncalled for. What do you think you were doing when you did that to Sasuke-kun? The blonde just stared at her before picking up Sasuke's unconscious form. He'll live, he said simply. I made sure I only used enough chakra to disable him. Other than that, he's uninjured. Oh, so he'll live then, so this makes it all okay. Naruto stared at her blankly. Yes. I hate you. Naruto hefted their teammate on his shoulder, making sure Sasuke won't slip off as they move. We're 20 minutes away from the tower, he calculated, checking their position from the posted map he memorized in the beginning of the second part of the test. We can have medic nins look at him at the tower and have enough time for us to prepare for the next part of the test. Let's go. Sakura glared a moment before she relented, following after her quickly accelerating teammate to their final destination. To this day I still don't know what Yugao Nichin was trying to tell me that night on Hokage Mountain. All I know is after that day, I lived only to train as if training was my only life. I never got to understand everyone, nor did I attempt to let my heart take the risks it took when I trusted Itachi-sensei. Itachi-sensei got out of the hospital after a month, and since then he's been coming down on me harder and harder. I never dared to complain after what I did to him. Maybe it's guilt, maybe I believed it was my fault after all these years. Then again, it was partially true. I hurt the only person who ever even believed I could be something more than a wasted life. Truth be told, it was the only thing I ever asked for anyway. It was already sunset when they made it to the medical center at the border of the forest. The trio lost no time bounding through the trees, sprinting all the 20 minutes it took to reach this place. Naruto lay Sasuke's unconscious form on the stretcher as the medical ninjas took him away. Sakura bit her lip worriedly, unsure of the fate of her teammate. The blonde glanced at her direction, his expressionless face not giving a hint of his thoughts. We have 30 hours before the deadline, he said suddenly. Enough time for him to recover before we need to turn in the scrolls. Sakura turned and stared, her eyes already watering over. Slap. Naruto's face didn't register the pain of the kunoichi's backhand. Damn you. Sakura raged. Would you have to go overboard back there? You could have seriously hurt Sasuke-kun. You deserve a lot worse, you heartless monster. The blonde remained silent as Sakura continued to give him a tongue lashing. There was no need to respond, not yet. The kunoichi chewed him out, punctuating every sentence with another backhand, the force of each strike succeeding only to shift Naruto's face in another direction. Sakura's rage ebbed slowly, her frustration building as even as she was hitting her teammate, he refused to move to defend himself. She continued hitting him harder, shouting more cruel words. Nothing. Still no reaction. In tears, Sakura collapsed on the ground, her eyes still blazing. Why? Do you really want to know? Naruto's hand came up, rubbing the red welts made by Sakura's knuckles. Sasuke-san purposefully chased down the enemy alone, the blonde began. This was reckless. He needed the team with him to back him up in case some other party chose this moment to strike him down and cause him injury. Or worse. The curse seal activating itself at that moment only complicated things, but not so much more than what seemed to have been. He then made the decision to kill the prisoner, even when it was obvious there was no need to do this. Don't be such a hypocrite, Sakura reasoned. You killed those rain ninjas easily. You have no right to call Sasuke-kun on his attempt when you would have easily done the exact same thing. The blonde nodded. True, he conceded. I would have done the exact same thing. The only difference being that the sound Kunoichi was nowhere near the power level Sasuke-san had at the moment. The curse seal amped up his skills and capabilities, up to the point when there was no conceivable way for any ordinary genin to even retaliate effectively against such an onslaught. As to my actions, I realized that I might have been too eager to use my own skill. But when you think about it, the point came down to one thing. Him or me. If I had held back even just a small part of my power in this situation, Sasuke would have done everything in his power to destroy me. This is no game, Sakura. I would have died had I lost. Sakura's mind attempted to grasp the situation on hand. Sasuke would never kill anyone. Never. But then she looked at the blonde standing not 3 feet from her again, trying to hold his empty gaze. Would he have killed Naruto? Would he really? The Kunoichi found herself torn. Her loyalty to her best friend and the impeccable logic of Naruto's action. Green eyes turned away, still unable to accept basic facts. Yes. You would have died. There was no reaction still. Naruto continued to stare her down for a couple of seconds more before he excused himself to head for the inside of the medical center. He had some wounds on him that needed treating, he explained. Sakura watched him leave, still wallowing in her own disbelief at what just transpired. It was a surprise to her when she called out to his retreating form. Wait. The blonde turned. I am sorry, Sakura's eyes were downcast. I honestly don't know what came over me. I had no right to say those things to you. Naruto nodded, not letting her finish her sentence. I know, he said. Another awkward moment passed before Sakura would speak again. What were those weird marks on Sasuke-kun anyway? The blonde looked away, unsure of whether he had clearance to tell her about classified information or not. I'll try to explain when I can, Naruto compromised, keeping his eyes away. But there's not much I can tell you. For now we should get some rest. There's 30 hours remaining before we need to turn in the scrolls, and we should take advantage of the time. The Kunoichi nodded, not noticing the rather subtle evasion. Alright. But we should watch over Sasuke-kun as well. Hi. I intended to do that. The pair walked through the medical center's glass doors, heading for the lounge where they could get a short rest before the next phase of the exams began. Naruto made a mental note to send a message to Kakashi-sensei and Itachi-sensei. If he knew a bit more about seal jutsu, he would have been able to take care of this himself. The blonde shook his head. No time to think like that, he reasoned. First things first. He had to keep Sakura and Sasuke safe. XXX. The white-haired Konoha ninja lowered his spyglasses and grinned. He had seen the devastation created by the nine-tailed fox firsthand and was happy with what he saw. His skills were astounding. Even better than what his intelligence had gathered. Orochimaru playing into the situation was pushed back in the recesses of his mind. He had far more important things to do. The chakra-activated nin card appeared in his hand. Uzumaki Naruto. Village of origin, Konohagakure no Sado. Notes. Was taught by current Anbu Captain Uchiha Itachi since age 6 in lieu of academy education. Proficiency with at least level A ninjutsu and jinjutsu. Taijutsu abilities derived from a style believed to be from Kurigakure. Battle potential, possible high A class or lower S. Missions completed being 40 D class missions, 25 C class, 10 from A class category, and a single S class mission. The ninja smiled again, pleased at the accuracy of his data. There was a big hole in the variables list, but as it was he was glad he knew at least this much. Even estimates can make a difference in a pinch. At least this was better than nothing, he said to himself. He made the necessary updates and turned to his subordinates. Yoroi. A man wearing sunglasses turned. Miss Yumi. The contortionist looked up. It seems our plans have changed, the ninja said, pushing his glasses up his face. This Uzumaki fellow seems to be attached to Orochimaru's target. I need you both to continue observing the medical center and report back to me any changes that might occur. The pair nodded before they blurred out of existence. Uzumaki Naruto, the spectacled ninja said, rolling the name off his tongue. What an interesting ninja you grew up to be. The man laughed darkly before he too melted into the shadows of the growing evening. XXX. Naruto clicked off his transmitter and headed back to the stairs that led him to the rooftop of the hospital. His footsteps resounded off the steel steps as his hand gripped the banister pensively. The communique was sent, Itachi and Kakashi would be there within the hour. Still he had a job to do and was not willing to put it off any longer. As the blonde walked to the hallways leading to Sasuke's room, his heightened senses could not help but notice the glares the medical technicians were giving him. Once or twice he even heard them whispering. "There's the Kyuubi brat," one said. "Quiet. We're forbidden to talk about this." "Not like he can hear us anyway." Naruto pushed the voices away until they were only background noise and continued walking. If they knew he could hear them, it was only a short moment before they were executed by the Hokage's law. It didn't make any difference if he already knew about the demon fox, the law was never repealed. Therefore, it was still in effect. Execution was the only punishment. Always. He ended up walking a couple of minutes more before he found himself in a deserted hallway. This was the scenic route true, but Naruto had no intentions of letting people talk behind his back when they were within reach. Emotions left unchecked were sometimes the most dangerous thing in a combat situation, and even outside of battle this still held true. His footfalls stopped as the blonde gathered chakra. There was no real name for this detection jutsu, and Naruto wasn't even sure it was a jutsu in the first place. It had something to do with sinking the mind into a level of consciousness that was forgotten ever since the day man started to embrace civilization. It was primal, accessing areas of the brain that mankind had unknowingly atrophied from thousands of years of disuse. No new senses were opened up, no heightening of the current ones. Merely a different state of mind being reactivated after a long sleep. There were many names for this technique, one for every existing culture. But the only name Naruto cared to learn was the single one Itachi taught him to use. Jetsume no Michi. The moonlit path. He rode the avenues of his mind as the moonlit path awakened to his touch. He sank into the depths of the move, making his mind all the more aware of everything around him. Sight but not sight. Naruto's eyes opened, revealing the red, slitted orbs of the demon fox. His own eyes wouldn't be much use here, and he needed the enhanced capabilities of his tenant. His senses searched a 50-meter radius around him, poking and probing until he found what he was looking for. "My, it seems your detection skills are better than I heard," someone said, stepping out of the shadows. He had the garb of a sound jounin, sporting purple garments over a rather pale complexion. His golden eyes smiled with delight, though his delight was a bit more malice-filled for comfort. Naruto's hand edged towards his weapon pouch as he angled his body to hide his hand. "Orochimaru, I presume?" "My. How my reputation precedes me." A shuriken flew through the air like a swarm of angry bees. A pale hand shot up and blurred in motion, capturing all 6 of the bladed weapons in the blink of an eye. The Sannin's other hand blocked an attack by an orange blur, the punch powerful enough to send echoes resounding through the empty hallway. The kunai strike by the blonde was blocked by the blades of the shuriken Orochimaru was holding in his other hand, and Naruto grimaced as he realized he was at an impasse. "So you realize it too, eh?" Sannin said. "Can't risk cutting loose here or you'll damage the building and in turn hurt your sensei's precious little brother." Pathetic. A sudden roundhouse kick made the snake user leap backwards, breaking their contact. Naruto's next strike was cut short as the Sannin planted an uppercut in his gut. The blonde rose 6 inches off the ground at the force of the blow and coughed loudly as the oxygen in his lungs was forcibly expelled. The Sannin shook his hand, surprised at how much it hurt to hit the boy. "I'm impressed you're still conscious," Orochimaru said, evading a half-hearted strike to the torso as Naruto collapsed from the pain of the previous attack. "But I don't think you'll be in any condition for any form of combat with me right now." The living weapon's eyes showed no acknowledgement of the older man's words. It was true. A lot of his own chakra was burned off during the encounter with Sasuke, and the sprint that brought him here almost let his chakra coils get burned out completely. He could use the Kyuubi's chakra but. Orochimaru ran a hand through his locks. "I suppose you're hesitant to let it take control of you? I don't blame you though. Too much danger in letting that happen right now, especially in quarters as close as this one. Face it, brat, you're out of your league this time." The old man laughed darkly as he set off in the direction of Sasuke's room. Surprise marred his face as he felt a ninja wire encircle his leg. "You won't pass through this hallway," the blonde said determinedly. Naruto held the wire between his teeth and rolled up his left sleeve. The arm was covered in an intricate seal tattoo, set in black ink on his skin. Quickly, the blonde's hands flashed through the seals before he bit his own thumb and ran the blood over the symbols. Fuchius no Jutsu. Kitsune no Tenkin. Summoning technique. Heaven Sword of the Fox. In Naruto's right hand appeared an ivory-hilted wakizashi, its blue steel glimmering in the fluorescent lighting. At the base of the blade was an intricate gold carving of a fox head, its hilt guard flowing outwards to show a symmetric set of 9 tails, supported by a filigree circle. The ninja wire was gripped in the boy's left hand, his eyes showing the readiness of a seasoned warrior. Orochimaru shook his head, laughing darkly. "Silly little weapon," he said. "Did you think even at this point you'd have the strength to defeat me? What do you hope to accomplish by burning off the last of your chakra? Only to delay you until help arrives, Naruto answered. Itachi-sensei and Kakashi-sensei will be here within 30 minutes. Golden eyes stared into blue as the Sannin reevaluated his options. You actually think you last for 30 minutes against me? He taunted. You'll be lucky if you reach 5. The ninja wire grew taut as the living weapon spun to his left to close the gap between them. Using the circular momentum of this move, Naruto brought his blade around in a punishing slash that would have decapitated a snake sage if only the older shinobi's kunai had not blocked the way. The weapons impacted each other with a loud clang, though the serpent master hardly budged. Konoha Ryu. Setsudanki no Mai, leaf style. Dance of the guillotine, Orochimaru observed. So you know of the ancient dance styles. Perhaps you will at least be an amusing kill. Very well, I will humor you for a few minutes. Naruto's internal clock ticked on. Okay, 25 minutes left. He only had to delay Orochimaru for 25 minutes and reinforcements would arrive. He kept a tight grip on the ninja wire encircling the Sannin's leg and poised himself for another strike, praying to Kami-sama his chakra would last a bit longer. XXX. Sakura sat in a chair by Sasuke's bedside. The Uchiha had been unconscious for the better part of an hour and showed no signs of coming out of it. Reaching over, the kunoichi brushed off a lock of the patient's hair from his face. You've been in and out of the hospital lately, Sasuke-kun. She joked. It's a wonder you don't live here yet. The pink-haired preteen forced a laugh. Sasuke remained silent, unconscious under the beeping of an EKG. 3 different IV drips were leaking vital medicine into his veins, one to counteract the muscle damage caused by his fight with Naruto, one to replenish his chakra faster, and another to provide nutrition to his starving bloodstream. The medical ninjas had speed healed most of his major injuries, but they said they had to wait until the very limit of the 30-hour deadline before they could pass their scrolls. Sakura stared at the rolled-up pieces of parchment in her hands. One marked heaven, another marked earth. How could they have gone through so much trouble just for these silly rolls of paper? She remembered vaguely what Naruto said. This is no game, Sakura. There was a point in her life when she had dreams of growing up a glamorous woman, and in a village like Konoha, being a kunoichi seemed the most glamorous job of all. Sakura shook her head. Naruto was right, she decided. This was no game. Becoming shinobi or kunoichi meant that every single day of your life was forfeit to the decisions of fate, no matter the skill of the ninja or the strength of his technique. Naruto was one gigantic object lesson in this. The boy was one of the most powerful ninja she knew, and in the fight against Sasuke, even he risked his own life to defeat the top rookie of their batch. The amazing thing was, he even kept from killing her best friend, even though the enigmatic blonde found it really easy to do this before. Sakura shook her head. She didn't think she'd be able to figure him out even if she tried. Still, she knew he had to be given his fair chance. After all, Itachi-senpai did train him. He couldn't be as bad as Sasuke said he was. What puzzled Sakura even more was how close Sasuke came to killing Naruto. In their initial sparring match, Uchiha gave it his all, and he failed to defeat him even with Sakura's assistance. How in the hell did he get all that juice? What were those strange marks on him? Sakura's thoughts were cut off when she felt a faint vibration rock the room. What was that? She asked aloud, to no one in particular. Her green eyes looked at a glass of water resting by the bed on a small table. She strained her side and waited for got it. The water on the surface of the cup rippled slightly. You wouldn't have seen it had you not known what to look for. Something was going on, something big. Sakura took a long glance at Sasuke before she got up and took off. She closed the door behind her as she ran to what was causing the tremors.